Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Monday night, March the 5th council meeting. I'd like to ask everybody that can to stand as we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions, modifications, or amendments? Hearing none, citizen participation? Madam Clerk? As I call your name, if you would come to the podium up front, and if you would identify yourself at home with your name and address, please. Thank you, ma'am. All right, first speaker is Curtis Bowers, and be followed by Margaret Newton. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council. Good evening, council members, citizens of Bowie, Mayor Robinson. My name is Curtis Bowers. I've recently been approved as a member of the City of Bowie Economic Development Committee. I stand before you to ask you to reconsider your decision not to include basketball courts in the planned new sports complex. In review of this feasibility study, which is located on the City of Bowie website, it states that there is an overwhelming need for additional basketball courts. However, you've instead decided to build an arena with 2 sheets of ice, or ice rinks, which, if I read the study correctly, is considerably more expensive than 2 additional basketball courts. As a concerned citizen, I'm not asking to stop your plans for the ice. I'm asking that you include basketball courts as well. Additionally, I would like to thank both council members Charlton Gardner for their continued efforts, and special recognition Councilmember Courtney Glass for standing up for the Bowie community. Finally, Mayor Robinson, council members Esteve and Marcos, please give our community, including the children and adults who enjoy the sport of basketball, these much-needed basketball courts.
Thank you, sir. Margaret Newton? Okay, and Ms. Newton will be followed by Gary Garton. And it looks like Avery Garton. Welcome.
Thank you. I was going to speak and say we needed the basketball court. As I look around, and I don't mean to play the race card, but when I go out to see the number of the black kids, there are not too many that play hockey, ice skate, and do all of that. We play basketball and we play football. So those are some things that we need, not just for some of our citizens, but if we're going to build an arena, we need to put facilities for all of them. So we need a basketball court.
Thank you, ma'am. Gary Garton and Avery Garton, and be followed by Brian Helmut. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Good evening, Mayor, and the
And your
council
young
and
friend.
the rest of the citizens of Bowie. Glad to see you all here. My name is Gary Garton, and it is my granddaughter, Avery Gunn, who wanted to participate in the government, and we're going to talk about a subject she holds dear to her heart. I've lived in Bowie since 1961. I was a teenager then. I'm 75 now. Putting cedar shakes on for Levitt on Cape Cod, all through the S section and the M section. So I've had the privilege of watching this city grow from dirt piles to where we are today. And I've also run a business in Bowie for over 40 years, which is still. On the other hand, my daughter here, she's a brand new citizen. She just turned 11 a few days ago. And I think that we probably represent nearly the entire age range of Bowie citizens. And we are here tonight to express our hopes that the city of Bowie will establish the honorary post of a city poet laureate. When I say once again, over a year ago I stood before this committee and with the same proposal, evidently to no avail, since we've gone to the mayor's office several times, and unannounced, of course. I understand that, but we weren't able to follow up on that, on what was going on. So that's why we're here tonight once more, to prevail upon this council to reconsider our proposal. Many of the smaller communities surrounding this city have a poet laureate. Most of the major cities in the state of Maryland have one. Just last week, the mayor of Annapolis, Kevin Buckley, you probably know him, announced the position of poet laureate and for their city. Now, let's. I just want to go over real quickly here. It's an honorary role whose responsibility is to promote the literary arts and literacy within the city of Annapolis. This is their proposal. The poet laureate would be the poet voice of our city, reaching children and adults in our community to build a common ground through the love of language and the arts. We're celebrating arts in Bowie today as it is. The poet laureate is just a 2-year term, and what they do is he conducts public readings, workshops, lectures, presentations at neighborhood schools, institutes, the garden clubs, all kinds of things to promote poetry and the love of language. Now, Annapolis is only going to give them an annual honorarium of $500, which I think is pretty low, to be honest with you. Avery and I believe that the cost benefits of creating such a position for the city of Bowie is probably one of the best proposals this council will have this year. There are nearly 6,000 streetlights in the city of Bowie. Public Works told me that today, with the average cost of between $3,000 and $8,000 apiece, maybe $5,000 average. If we were to offer an honorarium of only $500, matching that of the city of Annapolis, that's 1/10 the cost of a streetlight for a poet laureate for the city of Bowie. And while Avery and I can fully appreciate the benefits of a streetlight in a darkened corner of a parking lot, and without getting too poetic, the poster poet laureate can and will be a beacon of literary light shining among our citizens. The true measure of any community is its commitment to humanity, to the arts, to poetry, to the love of language. A poet laureate is a very honorable goal for the city of Bowie. And when you leave here tonight, and you go home, and you pass the dozens and dozens of streetlights on your way to your home, just consider that the cost of 1/10 of those, we can have a poet laureate for the city of Bowie. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice seeing you, Avery. All right, Brian, okay, I'm sorry. Your writing is almost as good as mine. He'll be followed by Kevin Holmes. Welcome, sir.
Hello, once again, I'm Brian McCormick. Hi, hello, everyone. So I'm a resident of Bowie's District 1, and I'm a registered voter as well as a lot of family and friends. I'm also a 2010 graduate of Bowie High School and a graduate of Towson University, where I studied sports management, and also my master's from Georgetown University, where I also studied sports industry management. So a nice little diverse background in sports. I also attend First Baptist Church of Bernardin, where I also coach basketball there as well, where we recently just won a Summer League championship. And I can speak on behalf of a lot of coaches and parents and staff in general that the need for basketball gyms are huge, and that's lightly understated. So I know that there's a lot of different options on the table, and a basketball gym would definitely be a good one. Unfortunately, with that being said, I must say that I'm pretty disappointed about the vote of the council to exclude basketball courts for the proposed sports complex. And I don't feel as though, unfortunately, that the decision, not me necessarily, but generally the decision isn't more so reflective of this part of the community, especially with the $27 million price tag that comes with that. For $27 million, I don't think that's a particular service that's fair to everyone in the community. I urge you all to please stop and reconsider the addition of basketball courts. And I have a direct request for my District 1 council member, Mr. Mike Estave. Mr. Estave, and forgive me for any mispronunciation, will you join others on this council who support inclusiveness, such as Council Member Courtney Glass? Thank you, Ms. Glass. And the opportunity to stand up for the community will not be forgotten on Tuesday, November 5th, which is the next scheduled citywide election. And I just want to thank you all for your time, and Yeah,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming by. Kevin Holmes, and Mr. Holmes will be followed by Anthony Moultrie. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Council members, Mayor Robinson. My name is Kevin Holmes. I am fortunate enough to serve as the president of the Bowie Boys and Girls Club. We number, at last assessment, about 5,500 participants in our club, so very happy to see it continue to grow and thrive, and certainly appreciate all the support that the city has provided us and the club and the youth of the community. Certainly not a complaint there at all. We stand here today to ask for continued support on additional basketball courts to service our demographic. Frankly, trying to service 5,500 folks, with basketball being one of our largest sports, servicing about 1,000 of the kids. We like to think that we provide a quality service to the community by subsidizing these activities for our community. But we're just out of space, or we're just overusing and all the current resources that we have. With the popularity of the sport growing, it's increased competitiveness for the spaces. So any additional space that the city could provide would allow us to continue to service any child that wished to participate and not have to turn away any, or severely limit the time that we can have the kids on the court. So again, I ask for your consideration or reconsideration with adding additional basketball courts to the facility, and I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Anthony, is it Motley? Moultrie. Welcome, sir. And he'll be followed by Joanne Marshall Hobbs. Welcome, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Anthony Motley. I'm a father and a grandfather. I'm here on behalf of my daughter who couldn't be here. She lives at 10319 Sea Pines Drive. She doesn't get off work until 9, but she asked me to come. My grandson couldn't be here. He is 21. He's working, and he doesn't get off work until 9. And my granddaughter, who graduated from Bowie High School, is a freshman at Morgan State, so she should be studying. I am a disabled Vietnam veteran.
Welcome home, son.
And you too, sir. Served in the 82nd and the 101st Airborne Divisions.
As did I.
All the way.
Above the rest.
Airborne.
All the way.
When I was a child, Stanton Road and Mississippi Avenue, Southeast Washington, D.C., we attempted to play basketball over in Oxon Hill, Maryland. We were denied the opportunity to play basketball on the basketball court that was outside of the Green Elementary School because of the color of our skin. So we had to play on a gravel lot that we made for ourselves at the foot of Stanton Road and Mississippi Avenue. Growing up, we faced a lot of discrimination, but we persevered because our parents and our grandparents taught us to be steadfast and unmovable and always abounding in order to accomplish that which is before us. Also, I played a little ball, wasn't that good at it, but I played. Broke my foot playing basketball. The game is a game that is dear to many young people, girls and boys. Even the President of the United States put a basketball court in the White House because he loved the game of basketball. So I want to thank Councilmember Glass for doing what she's doing, and all of the council members that are here. And on behalf of my daughter and my grandchildren, I'd like for you to reconsider your actions in denying a basketball facility here in the Bowie city, and add it to your planned sports complex so that we can be inclusive of all who desire to participate athletically. Young people growing up need as much opportunity as they can find. And if it's in our authority to make that available, then what we have to do is to find the resolve within us all to help our children to become all that they can be. Integrate sports, basketball, soccer, ice. My daughter, my other granddaughter, ice skates. And we think she's gonna go to the Olympics. She's a student at Bowie High School now. She's 17. And she is competitive ice skater. So I support the ice skating too. But I think that it's important to make sure that all of our children are developed properly. Teammanship, competitiveness. Everybody can't skate. I know I tried it. I couldn't do it. Everybody can't play basketball. But if you can make the decision to make it possible, I would encourage you to do so, Mr. Mayor and
Okay.
city members of the city council.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for your time, and look forward to coming
Vote
out,
arrest.
playing with you one day, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Joanne Marshall Hobbs, welcome, ma'am. Yeah, if you tell me you're in the airborne unit too, I'm gonna be.
Good evening, and first I'm gonna apologize. I have a cold, so I'm talking with a raspy voice. Good evening, council members, Mayor Robinson, and the citizens of Bowie. I've been a resident of Bowie since 2001. Actually, we relocated here from Connecticut because of my husband's occupation, which is in basketball. I heard everybody talk about being fair, bringing in inclusiveness, etc. I want to challenge the council to offer you to look at the financial aspects of bringing the courts into Bowie. I know there was talk about how much revenue that ice hockey would bring. I challenge you to look at the revenue that basketball courts would bring between the tournaments, attracting talent, attracting professionals, etc., in the area, and exposing our city to basketball. So once again, council, I respectfully request that you reconsider and look at offering the basketball courts and the sports facility. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Brenda James. Welcome, Ms. James, and should be followed by Millie Hall. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Brenda James. I am a resident of Bowie. I've lived in Bowie for 21 years. I don't play basketball, but I do know that sports is a very good way of teaching our youth how to grow, how to be good team members, how to be good citizens, how to work with people. So what I'm going to ask the council to do is to consider what our youth and our seniors need, and not to look at the bottom line directly. Look at what works for us, for our city. I think Bowie is a great place to live. I've been here for 21 years, but I think that government has a responsibility to make those decisions that are good for the population. Private industry makes decisions for making money. We should make decisions for our people. So I do suggest that you look at your feasibility study, look at what our requirements are, and make your decisions based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Millie Hall. Welcome, ma'am. Good to see you again.
Good evening, council. Mayor Robertson, my name is Millie Hall. I've lived in Bowie for 20 years. I'm here this evening to plead with you to reconsider adding courts. Our seniors also would like to consider something for us. We are getting up there, including yourself, Mayor Robertson. So we're asking that you would please consider adding courts, indoor sports arena. I would like to thank Councilman Glass for the request to the council to reconsider basketball courts. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. David, is it Naves or Neves? Oh. Welcome, sir. Have you followed by, oh, somebody's got the same name as you.
Council.
Somebody named Jacqueline then?
No, she's not here.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Dave Naves. I'm a former professional basketball player. I played for the Harlem Globetrotters, and also I'm on the board of directors of the National Basketball Retired Players Association. And I just want to come here to say that I know there was a decision made to eliminate basketball, but basketball is an important part of our culture as a country, as a city, and I would like you all to reconsider putting basketball back into the plan. Right now, I know for a fact that we're busting at the seams when it comes to basketball. When I go to the Bowie City Gym on a Saturday, I mean, it's just so packed. And I think by adding additional courts, I think we will open up opportunities for more kids to participate. And I think if you don't do that, there'll be a lot of kids left out and not have the ability to participate in something that they love to do. Also, to give us an opportunity to not only for the kids come in to play basketball, but also to for coaches, and also basketball can be a learning experience for the kids, provided that they have the facilities to participate. So I ask you, as a former basketball player, please reconsider putting basketball courts back into the facility. I think that would be the right decision.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Jacqueline Naves. My old buddy Chris Lawson. Good to see you, Chris. It's always good to see you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and everyone in attendance.
Because I know somewhere you're going to talk about all the money we put into Church Road Park.
I'm sorry?
I said somewhere in your finger we're going to talk about all the money in Church Road Park for your football program.
That was a long time ago. That's a great preface. That was a tough. Good evening, Council as well. I'm sorry. That was a tough decision then, and it kind of feels like this one. We were up against the bird sanctuary and so on and so forth. But you know what? We got through it. We went back and forth just like this with some of the other council members, but we got through it, and we got through it because it was the right thing to do. And so I'm listening to everyone talk about basketball, and that's what the indoor facility, will really bring is basketball courts. But we need an indoor facility. Let me just share something that maybe some folks don't know. In 2013, when you commissioned the survey with SFA, and basically they brought back recommendations from the community on what the community needs. And I'm going to say that again, on the community. In my opinion, we should have never even focused beyond that. But I was listening to the meeting that you had when you were going over the ice versus the courts, and it got into a non-resident need versus our residents. And to me, we should have stayed focused there, because in the survey, there were 624 residents that responded and 290 non-residents. So in my opinion, again, as I referenced Church Road Park, we should have focused really on the community. They spoke to you. They spoke to you all. 624 versus 290. And that's really where we should have been. It's not even about the basketball courts. It's about the indoor need. As Millie said, seniors, volleyball, twirl, all kinds of sports. So I've served on the Community Recreation Committee, as you know. You appointed me there for many years. And throughout all of those years, we talked about the needs of the city. And it was always indoor. But when we talked about indoor, it was always courts. And you asked us to do that. And you asked us to look at this and render our opinion. And our opinion was we needed courts. There was no one that was sitting on that board that could even conceive anything beyond courts, because that's what the information that you paid for, that the city paid for, was delivered to us. And that's what we, as members of the CRC, in good conscience, came up with. So another thing is, when you did it, the survey, there were 36.7% for basketball and 22% for ice hockey. I mean, well, you can just listen to the numbers and see what people want. And if we were really going based on what your people want, we wouldn't even be talking about ice. We'd be talking about soccer. We'd be talking about swimming. All of those things were way ahead of ice hockey. It's not that we shouldn't have ice hockey. We should have everything that our residents want. If that's what if you put it out on the table and then ask what people want and they give you that, we should be working to to bring that. And so that's the point that I'm trying to make tonight. I don't even know how we got to this point, but I watched that council meeting where you all ended on ICE. It didn't look good. I'm just, you know me, and I'm just being very candid. It didn't look good. You know, the discussion, that's what it was. It was discussion, and next thing you know, there's a vote for ICE only. We should have both. I don't think anyone who wants ICE has any problem with courts, just as those who want courts probably don't have any issue with ICE. And my thing is, if you do ICE only, I mean, we're really saying that are we really saying that we're going to spend $20-some million on an activity, on a sport, where only 20-some% versus nearly 40% of residents say they want otherwise? I think that's a bad decision. And I think you all really have to consider this. I mean, you see all the people out here tonight, demonstrating what they want and what they believe in and what we should have. I mean, everybody's going to say, these are our tax dollars. We put up the tax dollars, and that's just the way it is. So I think that, we have an opportunity here to resolve this. One other thing that I didn't mention, when I served on the CRC, we had this thing that was called a master plan. And in it was indoor facility, specifically courts. All the information referenced courts. And we have taken it completely off the table for ICE. And I'm wondering if it's because of the money. And the one lady came up and said she was referencing, basketball and revenue. I brought to the CRC a number of times information that proved that courts would be a big hit in this area, but we waited too long. We waited too long. We had an opportunity to build more courts on the original gymnasium, and we waited too long. I said then, but I was the youngest person in the room at that time. So, we missed that opportunity to serve the community, and now the community needs what we believe it should have, and we're not taking it serious enough, in my opinion. I think we really have to stop looking at it as ICE versus basketball and look at it as what your people want and what they deserve and what they've, through this survey and coming out here tonight, and I'm sure it's probably going to be 5 or 10 more people coming up to say the same thing. So my pitch is to just simply do the right thing. However it works, you know, and I've been inquiring about how it works, how we get this reconsidered. If it's one of you or two of you or three of you or whichever one of you it is, give that some serious thought and bring it back, because this doesn't look good. And I think we need to look good no matter which way we go.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Carrie Bridges? Carrie?
She's upstairs at another meeting.
Oh, okay. Mr. William Green?
I think she's right there, coming through the door.
Oh, there she is. Okay. How's that for an entrance? You're the penultimate speaker, which for you math majors reminds you is the next to last.
Okay.
Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, City Council staff, and residents of Bowie. My name is Carrie Bridges. I am the basketball commissioner for South Bowie Boys and Girls Club and the chair of the Community Recreations Committee for the City of Bowie. I was completely disappointed in the decision to disregard what the citizens of the city stated as a need through a survey conducted 5 years ago by an independent group. During that study, the group surveyed 634 Bowie residents and 290 non-residents, to which was a greater need to accommodate recreational activities in the city. At that time, 36% of the residents and 29% of the non-residents felt basketball courts to be a need of the city. The mission of the CRC is to advise the City Council on all recreational matters and works for the continued cooperation among and improvement of all public recreational facilities in the City of Bowie. The CRC recommended 3 courts and 1 sheet of ice to accommodate the citizens of Bowie. If you ever go to the Bowie City Gym, if you ever have an opportunity to go there on a Friday night, 2 weeks ago, it is a safety hazard for our young kids because we accommodate 1 court and they have open court for the other kids, but you have 18-year-olds to 5-year-olds trying to shoot on a basket. I don't know what could be done, and I'm sorry I came in late. I was at a South Bowie Board of Directors meeting upstairs. I don't know what can be done at this point, if there can be a revote. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to express on behalf of the CRC, and I'm sure you got the letter that I sent, that we were extremely disappointed that you didn't take into what we recommended. You didn't take that into account. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Always good to see you. William Green? I just saw you here a minute ago. Oh, Mr. Green? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr.
Council and residents. Mayor Robinson, we've been through this before. First of all, I want to go to work and thank Mr. Michael Esty. He's been doing a fantastic job for the Old Town Bowie area. Mr. Gardner has been very supportive. Mr. Eichtright has been very advisory in terms of giving advice in terms of doing things, and I'd like to also thank Ms. Courtney Glass. And I do believe there's been some issues and problems area. I really do feel as though it's a lot of them that has been approaching her in a negative way, and it's not a good thing. She's done a fantastic job. I've had an opportunity to work in her community with some of her residents over there, some of the ideas and programs that they've come up with. And I think she should be given another chance in terms of her position and representing the community. And I'm going to back off from that and just leave that part alone because we're short on time. Now, on the ice rink, along with everyone else here that has talked about the ice rink, I believe also, let's don't say I, let's say we, because I represent a community which is the Old Town Bowie and part of the Adnell development in that area. I've talked to 7 constituents and residents in that area, and they would like to see not only the ice rink, but they would like to see basketball courts added also. We have to think of the combination. I hate to pull the race card. If you go into the gyms, and observe what's taking place there. Most of the folks or the young folks that's involved in the activities there, they're black. And as it's been mentioned earlier in the community, I'm a resident from this area, has been all my life, 60 plus years. I was raised in a farmhouse right over here not too long, well, a long time ago. And I'm gonna be honest with you, we've come a long way. And we need to take a look at that. The area in which you're trying to build the ice skating rink, we need to also look in there, there's new development coming up in there. And we have to consider the families that's gonna be in that area that's gonna wanna participate along with that, not only just the ice skating rink, but the basketball court, basketball as well. And I think, just to make it a long story short, I think a basketball court should be added in there as well. To address some issues, jumping again, address some serious issues that we've talked about over 30 years now in the old town of Bowie. We're looking at sidewalks. Now, I have to admit, there has been some new not sidewalks, but crosswalks. A few of them have been put in. Curbs and gutters have been put in. But we have some old additional sidewalks that's been there for more than 40 years. They're cracked up, mashed down into the ground. I don't understand, and some of the residents don't understand, how can you build curbs and the curbs and gutters and don't replace the sidewalk areas? The other thing we're looking at is trash in the area. I mean, it's wintertime now. You can look through the woods. There are bags of leaves, bags of trash, cars from accidents that's happened there in the area, debris is being left on the side of the road or thrown into the wooded area. We have a deteriorating bridge there, which is also unsafe to cross that area there when you're going over to the restaurants or going into the antique shops. We would like to try to see if we can get something done about that as well as far as the condition of that bridge. It has not improved. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about the police department. We have seen presence in the community. I'd like to commend Chief Nesty. So far, he's doing a pretty good job along with his comrades. And we would still like to see more police presence there. And I urge all the members here in the chamber, as well as the residents, we need to get out and vote. And we need to do more often. And I do believe, again, let me take out I, it's we. We do believe that the budget that has been implemented to put this ice rink and the basketball courts we're talking about, I'm quite sure they could come up with a better budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's all the people I have signed up to speak. And I appreciate all the heartfelt thought that's going through this. Kind of reminds me back, Chris said, we've known each other a long time, and I remember as a young rookie, he came into the South Bowie Boys and Girls Club, as I was one of the founders of that club, and coached and refereed basketball for a lot of years. So I appreciate where we are. I don't want to litigate this tonight, but let me just say a couple of things, maybe just give a big, broad perspective as, at least as I see it. At one time, the council had committed to building a combined facility on the Church Road project. We were going to do basketball and ice. The cost just got out of sight. It morphed from about 20 million to 40 million, and we just decided we could not do that. Then we decided to cut it down and have some ice and a couple of courts. The numbers on that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We opted, and while we were doing that, we were doing an engineering assessment of the current ice rink. And that engineering assessment is that the current state of the facility is in such worn out condition, been there since 1972, I guess. It would require $2 to $4 million to invest into at least an initial upgrade, and that would potentially give us 2 to 4 years of use. And we didn't think that was a good investment. So then we started looking at how do we deal with that problem, because there's a high likelihood that the ice rink is just going to collapse. So we looked at the original site, and we decided first to just replace one sheet of ice for one sheet of ice and everything be status quo. We would not have expanded their capacity by 1 minute of time. They have the same amount of time now they had in 1972. We would not have expanded anything. Then when the engineer came in, and he said they gave us a number for the one sheet of ice, and they said if you want to do a second sheet of ice at the same time, we're doing this, I can put the second sheet in for 10% more. Council thought that was a reasonable thing. We didn't go into this to build 2 sheets of ice. But it looked like at the time it was a reasonably economical decision, and it would have provided ice potential probably for the next 25 years. That's where we have moved forward. We have invested a substantial amount of money already into this project. What I'm looking at is, I am quite, and I know this is not going to go over well with a lot of you, I am quite inclined to continue as we are doing, trying to resolve the existing thing. I have no problem with us, next month we're starting the budget process, and we can look at options and alternatives. We've always looked at this site as something that could be an add-on. But like I say, I'm not trying to expect you to understand how I see this and accept it. But right now, what I'm looking at is shutting down the ice rink and those users and them ending up with nothing. And like I say, as one who started out in the South Bowie Boys and Girls Club, when we had no gym, we used the elementary schools. We had partial time at the community centers, and we had to fight with them to get, the adults out. So I think everybody here understands the need and the desirability, and we all understand that sports is not just about the game. I've heard it over and over again. Well, I think everybody in this room understands that the sport is the vehicle for the children to learn communication skills, leadership, getting along with people, getting things done. Because all you guys have been giving them fraud for them for years. They think they're having a good time. In reality, you're teaching them. And you're teaching them those leadership skills that they're going to need for their lifetime. Now, council has some options. In terms of doing a reconsideration, my sense is, my recollection of Robert's rules was which we go by. Anybody that was in the majority opinion can ask for a reconsideration. Or we can move, other option would be just to, continue forward and look at the budget process to see if we can get some options there. But like I say, I have to tell you, we're looking at a very expensive opportunity. We have a very solid, conservative, balanced budget right now, and we haven't raised taxes for the last 8 years. If we go this route to expand in the next year or so to add more courts, that's going to require some kind of tax adjustment. So it will not only affect all of us, but it's going to affect the city's lawn. So that said, I'm open for a conversation, a quick conversation. Then I got business items we got to do because this was not scheduled for tonight. Mr. Stev.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll keep my remarks short tonight. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out tonight and for sharing your concerns about the sports complex. I was one of the people who 2 years ago when I first got on the council and we were looking at the original combined facility, which at that point had been in discussion for like 5 or 7 years. The combined facility, the final price tag for which, like the mayor said, was close to $40 million, in my view, was not reasonable. The city has roughly $30 million in reserves, but every single budget that I've been here, we've had projected expenses exceeding revenues, right? So every single year I've been here, every budget has been a nail biter to see if we would end up having to, dig into reserves to pay just for regular operating expenses. So the city overall is not in a bad financial position. We have reserve money. We haven't raised taxes in a long time. But the concern is that as I came on board, we were at that point where our expenses and our revenues are right around here. And, we're talking about our fiscal 2019 budget, next year's budget coming up. And again, we're looking at projected expenses being ahead of revenues. So I was not a fan of the original concept and originally argued that without an immediate need, right, without like an existing facility falling apart, I couldn't support, any additional construction because then it jeopardizes us being able to take care of existing stuff, right, that we might lose or that just needs maintenance. Fast forward, the original project got so expensive, a lot of my colleagues, I think all of us agreed not to pursue it. And as the mayor said, the only reason why we considered ice is because our building inspector looked at the facilities we currently have. Our current ice rink is the oldest one by far. It was built in the 70s, it's almost half-century old building, and basically told us we got 5 years left. We could put $2 million aside for any emergency things that come up, but in, I guess now, 2 to 4 years, that thing is facing imminent disrepair, right? And it supports a lot of programs I know that our gyms are full. I was a Bowie Boys and Girls Club guy not that long ago. Believe me, I used our gyms. I know that our gyms are full. Our courts are full too. What's happening is that our court is very old and it's facing being condemned, right, in the next 5 years, which means we will lose the building and all the programs it supports unless we do something. The only reason we're even looking at a dual ice rink is because the dual ice rink, we believe, can pay for itself, right? Ice is a much more expensive sport. There's very few ice rinks in the region. People pay through the nose for them, right? Our current ice rink, even in its dilapidated condition, loses between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. Our gyms, which are relatively new by comparison and very well used, that still loses $500,000 to $600,000 a year. And that's even with recent fee increases we've implemented, right? Because you just can't charge the same for basketball and volleyball, nor should we, right? So the only reason we even looked at the dual rink is because our architect showed us that we can substantially increase revenue, but not double our expenses, right? So we would have $24 million in upfront construction costs, including improvements to Church Road we'd have to make, but we would be wiping our existing operating losses for ice off the books. We'd be improving an amenity that we will otherwise lose, and we will save the city $200,000 to $300,000 in the process, right? So I say that. The only other thing, you know, the vast majority of residents in my community that I've spoken to want us to build nothing. And I'm willing to bet that if we went to like referendum, for instance, that the no build option would win. I'm willing to bet, for a number of reasons, I'm willing to bet that we would end up with no ice rinks or losing our existing ice rinks and not having courts as well, right? I'm willing to bet. Because the biggest issue that residents have talked about more than just the desire for sports and for new amenities is for us not to raise property taxes. In a combined facility, we will have no choice. It will put our budget into the red sufficiently, and the operating expenses will put our budget into the red sufficiently that we would have to look at raising property taxes down the road. So what I want to do, you know, we got notification literally yesterday that you know, one of my council colleagues expressed that she wanted us to reconsider this. You know, I'm not going to move that we reconsider anything tonight, but staff did give us some options a while back. What I do want to do, we have a little bit of time. I want to take the next few weeks, and anyone who wants to talk about this issue, I want to talk, and so do my colleagues. I want to sit down with anyone and anyone who is willing. I think Mr. Lawson is here. I tried to get your phone number earlier, couldn't find it. I really want to chat with you. I got a ton of business cards. Please stick around if you can, and let's have a conversation. Because I want to make sure that whatever we decide, that we get, you know, most of the community on board, right? And I want to make sure people understand the pros and cons of the options in front of us. You know, I don't use ice, and I'm, you know, not playing basketball a whole lot. Gained a little bit of weight. You can tell I haven't been getting outdoors much, right? So this isn't for me about one sport or the other. It's just about protecting an existing amenity we will otherwise lose and keeping it going in a way that will improve upon it and save the city some money. That's all where I'm coming from. So I do want to talk about this some more. I'm not going to make any decisions tonight, but I do want to keep the conversation going. And if we decide we want to go in a different direction, if we decide we want to do a referendum, you know, we can look at that. But let's keep the conversation going, and let's make sure that we're honest about the trade-offs of one versus the other. Are we willing to pay more in taxes? Are we willing to potentially lose an existing amenity? You know, that kind of thing. That's the sort of thing we need to talk about. So thank you all for coming out tonight, and feel free to grab a business card, talk to any of us after the meeting, and we'll be happy to continue to chat and see what we can work out. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Trout, but council, I'm going to give everybody a chance to make a comment, but I would remind people we're already at the 9 o'clock, and this was not an agenda item, so I didn't block time in for this. Dr. Trout?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. The problem I have is that the proposal that I saw at the last council meeting was completely foreign from what I had seen in any of the other council meetings or since the indoor ice facility was proposed. And just for information's sake of, just give you some additional information. Actually, that idea came up as a result of my meetings with a former member of the Recreation Committee, who was the chair of the Recreation Committee, and that was Chris Lawson. We had a number of discussions over that to look at what we thought would be feasible and what we thought was needed and what was necessary. So the original proposal that came out was for an indoor facility, of which We came up with the name. And what we had was courts we knew we needed. The original proposal was looking at 5 courts. And the overlay of volleyball would be 6 volleyball courts, in addition to 2 ice rinks. Now, the ice rinks were not supposed to be the same size. We've never talked about having ice rinks the same size. In fact, we had to learn what the difference is in sizes between an Olympic ice rink and also a hockey ice rink. Olympic ice rink being slightly larger than that of a hockey rink. So when we were looking at all of this, this is what we came up with, and you heard the price tag, and the price tag went up considerably. It almost doubled in price. So we said, well, no, we can't do that. So we got together with, talking with members of the CRC, Community Recreation Committee, and then the last proposal that came out really came out from the CRC, and it was one that I could support, and that was to drop the courts down to 3 courts as opposed to having 5 full courts, 3 full courts. And then we're looking at 1 sheet of ice. Now, that sheet of ice could be either hockey or it could be Olympic. I was trying to lobby for Olympic because Olympic is larger than the hockey, and therefore what you could do on the Olympic, you could also do on the hockey. So that was the proposal, and that was, how it came. But we never, the council never considered, never entertained, never had any conversations about having 2 ice rinks that are the same size. And for what purpose, I do not understand. Because clearly, the SFA study did not say that we needed an additional ice rink because we had that much business, or that we had that much following, or we had that many people participating in ice. It didn't say that. The ice thought was because of the failing condition of the current ice facility. And I'm finished. Now, when it comes time for reconsideration, I can't make a reconsideration. And the reason I can't make a reconsideration, even though this was a proposal that I brought forth to the council several years ago, it got completely turned around. It was changed substantially so that I voted no on the proposal. And since I voted no on the proposal, according to parliamentary procedure, I cannot bring it back. You have to have voted on the prevailing side. There are only 3 members on this council that voted on the prevailing side. I'm finished.
Ms. Glass.
Good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody who's taken time out of their busy schedules to come here this evening to share kind words and support for the youth of our community. I think that we need to, first of all, Councilman and staff, yes, I sent the email yesterday asking for reconsideration, but multiple times you have sent agenda amendments the day of a council meeting. So I don't think that is neither here nor there. Yes, we have some changing demographics in the city of Bowie. We are now a majority-minority jurisdiction. We must take into account all residents' needs and wants and amenities. We also have a large aging population. So the only way that Bowie continues to thrive and be a city of excellence is if we continue attracting young people, families, and young professionals to this area. And that is done via amenities. I have no issue with the ice rink. I believe we do need a new ice rink, but we also need courts. The ice rink provides not only ice hockey, but also ice skating, competitive or not. And the basketball courts don't just show basketball courts. Volleyball is played, cheerleading, and like Ms. Hall said, other activities for our seniors. We've been told many times over the last 2 years by other groups of residents that we don't listen. The council does not listen to its residents. In all their conversations, it was about development. This is not about development. This is about our children having a safe place to play their games, to learn leadership, to learn teamwork, and to just have fun. I believe we need to reconsider this item. We need to finally start listening to our residents, all of our residents. As the eloquent students of Parkland High School have reminded us many times over almost the past three weeks since the horrible tragedy, elected officials work for you. You all, the residents, the citizens of Bowie, do not work for us. I implore as Councilmember Child alluded to, proper procedure is that one of the prevailing members has to ask for a vote to reconsider the item. I was not in attendance at that meeting, thus I cannot ask for the reconsideration. However, I can publicly implore my two council colleagues, Mr. Esteve and Mr. Marcos, to reconsider this, to open the conversation back up. We have opened other conversations backed up for other demographics of the city. This one, I think, is even more important than any conversation about development. This is about our children, and this is about the future of Bowie. So with that, thank you all again for showing up. Thank you for being here and voicing your concerns. I hope to see more of you here on a more regular basis, but I appreciate you making your voices heard right now. And if I could, very quickly, can I ask everyone in the room who is here in support of imploring my colleagues to reconsider this vote to please stand. I believe that says it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Glass. Thank you, Councilwoman Glass, for those comments. And I want to thank you for asking the council to reconsider this issue. As you know, this is near and dear to my heart, and working with youth and providing services to the entire city of Bowie as a community at whole. I want to start by saying I am supportive of all recreational activities to include basketball. And I do know that tonight we are not going to move to a reconsideration, but what I'm asking and in conversations here, side conversations with my colleague Mike Esteve, Councilmember Esteve, he and myself would like, and as well as those here, unless I do have a colleague here who like to consider reconsideration at this moment, but what I like to do is what we want to do is to hold a complete meeting. Mike Esteve wants to hold a town hall meeting with the residents to talk about basketball totally. He wants to get your input so that you guys can provide him with a reason for changing or either including basketball or either going to referendum and letting the residents of Bowie make up that decision. Now, I do have a question, though. I do have one question, and this, again, was not on tonight's agenda, as the mayor said, and we have a full agenda pending. Could I ask Mr. Lawson to come forward if you have a moment? Mr. Lawson, I have a quick question of you. Councilmember Esteve brought up a very good point regarding the ice arena and the cost, and where we would not want to see additional financial burdens on the city of Bowie. My thoughts are, if we're building a project and taxpayers are going in debt for it, then we need to be inclusive of all residents in all communities. My question to you, Mr. Lawson, and I know in having previous conversations with you, is that you said that the basketball courts, additional courts, could become profitable for the city of Bowie if managed properly. And you said to me you have data which supports that.
Right.
Could you speak to that, Mr. Lawson?
Briefly, please.
Excuse me.
Briefly, please.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
I have a lot of young people here, too, that are already.
I hear your point, and I hear you wanted to be, but I want to give him the opportunity to speak fully.
I didn't hear what the mayor said.
Oh, he said briefly. I said, no, you go on and speak.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a brief answer. I'll do my best. But again, I noted that we waited too long. When we were CRC committee having these discussions, I brought information to the table at that point in time that supported the need for more courts. The data throughout the amateur youth leagues and such that, you know, are taking place in the country directed interest in the DMV, specifically Prince George's County. I don't have to tell many people here that we're the mecca for basketball. We keep talking about basketball, so you should know that. We have, I think, at least 9 or 10 athletes from this county, just from the county alone, that are playing professionally. That's remarkable. So the story I'm trying to tell is that at that time, the opportunity for growth in indoor courts was pivotal. But what we did was we waited until other areas saw this opportunity as well and started building facilities. There are at least 3 in the region that are coming up because nobody has them. So if there weren't any and people want to come here for the competition, we had it. You know, we had the stronghold at that time. And basketball can be, since we're talking again about basketball, but I'm not biased, I'm thinking like Councilwoman Glass said, multiple sports. Every day. You know, it's an everyday thing. I mean, you know, I bet if I'm one of the biggest users of our current facility with my sports company, and I only use it 4 weekends out of the year. And those are 5-digit rates for 4 weekends out of the year. So, you know, we may have missed our opportunity, but I don't think so. And I don't know why it's necessarily about the revenue. I know we got to run it, and I know the current facility runs at a deficit, but that's because of how we brought it to bear in the first place. We used both boys and girls clubs to make it happen. So you got to make good on that. You use those two to make it happen, so you got to make good on that, and so you can't do very much when you're needing to accommodate a growing city and 2 very large boys and girls clubs, the largest one of them, the largest in the county. It's not a brief answer, I apologize. But there's money to be made both ways. I think somehow you have to figure out how to do ice and courts. Ice and courts. Imagine if you did 2 sheets of ice in 1 court. Wouldn't that be 1 more court? We have 3 courts at Bowie City Gym. We want 5. We wanted all courts, honestly speaking. But again, we realize that the community has more than 1 need. That just happens to be the greatest one. So I really don't think you should omit completely, even if it's 1 court, preferably 2. But I know you have the minds and the hearts to figure that out. And I know I'm not directly answering your question.
No, you are. You have.
But you were talking about money. I mean, have we thought about public-private partnerships to run it a different kind of way? Have we thought about designating the new facility
to the Boys and Girls Club, which is what, if I had to make that decision, that's what I would do, and take the other one and address the community beyond that, as well as make it make money. The only facility in Prince George's County has gone through 2 ownerships, and they have 10 courts, and it's closed. And Bowie is the only place in Prince George's County, really and truly, where you can host a multiple team event in one location. Most people want to go to one location. That's the opportunity that we're missing here with basketball. It's all year long, and I'm telling you, the numbers are there. I'd be happy to share with you what I shared years back. This was years back. We've been talking about this probably for what, 10 years, at least?
All right, I appreciate it.
I don't know why
Thank
you, Mr. Lawson.
Because we still have a whole bunch of little.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lawson, for coming forward with that. And if, as we move forward, if you could share that data with us, and Mike, Councilmember Estev will be conducting a town hall meeting that I myself will participate in, along with Councilmember Glass. I want to piggyback off of, we'll get that information out. But I just want to piggyback off of Councilmember Glass's statement by saying that I too would hope very much that my colleagues would support myself, Councilmember Trout, and Councilmember Glass in joining us in providing services for the full community for the city of Bowie. Neither one of us, and I do want to say, I believe I can speak for the 3 of us, Councilmember Glass and Trout, that we are not against ice. We just want basketball as well. And it looks, you have to call it as it is. You have to call it as it is. It looks as though there is a divide racially, to where you have 3 black council members who are asking for basketball courts to be included in the ice arena, and then you have 3 non-minority council members doing the opposite. You have to call it as it is. It doesn't look good. So I'm asking my colleagues to be representative of the entire city, the entire community of Bowie. And I'm asking all of us to take that in mind as we move forward. One gentleman came forward and spoke that there's an election coming up next November 5th, 2019. That is a date that I'm asking everyone to take into consideration. We have to be a full community to representing all minorities, blacks, whites, women, men, gays, transgender, everyone. And I could be home right now watching Netflix, people. I mean, I'm not paid a large salary to sit up here, maybe what, $10,000 a year. So I could be doing a number of things. I really love Bowie. I love its residents. I love its people. I love its services. And not every service is going to turn a profit. Some services you are supposed to provide just because you're a taxpayer, just because you are government. And that includes basketball, recreation, hockey, road improvement, trash collection, core services. So and public safety. It is important that we do that. I want to give thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. I love to see the community come out and show their support for something they feel that's near and dear to their heart. And I love the fact that you put your money where your mouth is. Thank you very much. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Thank you, Courtney, Jimmy, Ike, and Mike.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
I'm going to close this off, but I can't close it off without saying, quite frankly, I'm a little disappointed in the racial connotation.
Well, I have to call it as it is,
Wait a minute,
Mr.
listen,
Mayor.
listen, give me a chance to talk.
Go ahead, you speak.
You know,
You speak.
I just think the inference that, I think the inference is wrong, and I think that you've known us long enough to know that we're, you know, I'm looking at a dollar and cents thing. I don't look at, you know, at anything, you know, other than that. And to imply that I have some adverse.
No, I didn't imply.
reason.
I didn't imply.
Yeah,
I said, I said,
okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Well,
is that the
reasonably disagree
vote
on
is
that.
divided down the middle between black council members and white council members. And in black community, kids play basketball. They're not ice skating. I'm not saying I'm against ice skating. I'm saying I'm inclusive. I want to see ice skating. I also want to see basketball
All right.
courts.
Well, then, I would suspect.
I didn't
that-
say anything about that. I didn't
All right.
call anyone a racist. I just said the perception.
Okay, well, perceptions sometimes are real. All right, well, let's do this. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to let you guys offer some kind of a budget conditional look at this. But like I say, do it honestly and say, this is what it's costing, this is what the impact's gonna be. Okay, with that said, I've got a bunch of kids in here that have been here patiently for an 8 o'clock meeting, so I'm gonna close this off. I do thank you, and I do thank you for the fact that even though I understand the heartfelt differences, I will tell you, it does represent Bowie, when we can have these kind of conversations as civilly as we have. So I thank you all very much. So with that, I'm going to move on to presentations for the Martin Luther King Awards program. And you're all welcome to stay for that if you like, and I'm going to sit with Mrs. Cooper and the chair, Elvita Dixon. Welcome to both of you.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, council members, and members of the community. I am Elvita Dixon. I am the chair of the Diversity Committee, and I just wanted to say that when I stood up before, it was not because I was here in support of the previous discussion. I'm really here to give out the awards for the Martin Luther King Jr. Art Contest. But I did hear some intelligent arguments, and because of that, I stood. But again, I'm here tonight really to give out the awards for the Martin Luther King Jr. Art Contest. And I just wanted to say that this year's theme was freedom yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we had approximately 600 entries representing almost all of the Bowie area schools. Now, I understand that some of the students tonight did have to leave because they are attending school, and they will be in school tomorrow. But I do want to still acknowledge the winners of this year's contest. We had 3 categories. We had coloring, poster, and video. The coloring entries were judged on color, neatness, and coloring of all of the elements in the picture. The poster, and that was grades K through 2. The poster contest was grades 3 through 5. And the entrants were also required to submit a description of their works in 100 words or less. And the video contest was for students in grades 6 through 12, and they had to submit a 90-second video that expressed the contest theme of freedom yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so the winners of the coloring category for K through 2nd grade, Edith Fiquete from Heather Hills Elementary School is our first place winner. And she's a 2nd grader at Heather Hills, and the prize amount is $75. Is Edith still here? Okay. Our 2nd place winner with the prize amount of $50 is Nalia Lawson from Heather Hills Elementary School, also a 2nd grader. And then for 3rd place, we had a tie. The amount of the prize was $25. Peyton Sharp, who could not be here tonight, who was a 2nd grader at Pointer Ridge Elementary, and Vama Tran, who is a 2nd grader from Heather Hills Elementary. Okay. Would you like them to come get their money now? They come up and get their money now? Yes, Vama Tran is here. Okay, come on up.
check from us? Pass it quickly.
Our next category is poster category.
Get a picture? One thing we do is not get in the way between mom.
Okay.
You want to take a picture? Okay. Or take a picture, oh, you got someone else to take a picture before you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Our next category is the poster category from 3rd through 5th grade. And the first place winner with a prize of $100 is Shabad Singh from Heather Hills Elementary, a 5th grader.
Congratulations to you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Our second place winner with a prize of $75 is Joseph Harrison IV from St. Pius Regional, a 3rd grader, and I understand Joseph had to leave early. And then our third place winner with a prize of $50 is Abraham Bressinger, a 3rd grader from Pointer Ridge Elementary. Okay, looks like Abraham had to leave as well. And in our final category, our video category is 6th through 12th grade. The first place winner was a joint entry, Patrick Brown from Samuel Ogle Middle School, an 8th grader. If he's here to accept the award, it's a $150 prize. Our second place winner is Brooklyn Patterson from Samuel Ogle Middle School, 6th grader, and the second place prize is for $125.
Yes, can you get a little closer? We all this side here. Okay. Okay, now come on. This is my extended family.
I didn't see anybody filming that.
Got it.
Congratulations.
And for our third place winners, we had a tie. Megan Baker, from St. Pius Regional, a 6th grader, and Jocelyn Gross from St. Anne's School of Annapolis, also a sixth grader, and the prize amount is $100. And I believe that Megan is here tonight. So again, I want to thank all of the contestant winners and all of the persons who participated in the contest, because one of the reasons why we have this contest is so that we can all be able to achieve Dr. King's dream of all persons, regardless of race, color, religion, nationality, will be able to be appreciated and valued for the contributions that they make to our great country and to this city. Thank you.
Before you leave, I just want to take a second on behalf of all of us to thank you, Alveda Dixon, for the time and blood, sweat, and tears you put into this project. You know, you've been incredible in the talent that you have drawn, you know, to bring this, I'm one of the older people here, so I remember Dr. King's speech at the memorial, and I've been a big fan ever since. An incredible guy. And thank you for keeping that memory alive, and thank you and your committee for all you do to instill that love and affection in the next generation. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And thanks to Chris, too, for driving.
You're welcome. And can I say something off the
Sure.
record? Okay, I just want to say that I've been listening tonight, and I think the issue is twofold. One, whether to have the courts, and two, how to pay for it. I think those are the two issues that are on the table. And if it's important to the people, and then you find a way to pay for it.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mrs. Cooper, Una Cooper, thank you for, the staff leadership on putting the package together and putting the programs together. Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager report.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to pass on that since I'm going to give you a mid-year budget report. Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda, council, you have a consent agenda items A through C. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Garner. Do I second? Second by Mr. Marcos. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Old business, approval of ordinance 02-18, authorizing creation of a floodplain easement. Who's going to handle it? Oh, Counselor?
Huh?
Oh.
Why don't you, go ahead now. Go ahead and do it now. Okay. Yes, sorry. It's my first. What do I have to say? Oh, I'm sorry. The reason we are doing the ordinance is the Prince George's County is requesting an easement across our property, our NCN Way property, where we are planning to do the solar array farm. They want to be able to enter the property to look at the 100-year floodplain, and also so that we do not have anything built on that particular floodplain.
Okay, Counselor?
And let me just add that the reason that you have an ordinance before you is that there's case law suggesting that whenever you grant an interest in property, because you're disposing of part of your ownership interest in this property, you have to do that. That's part of your ordinance-making powers specifically. So it can't be done by resolution. And so we've prepared an ordinance that looks a lot like your other ordinances when you've granted interest in property, either conveying it outright or just a less than fee ownership interest. You have to do it by ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Declare the public hearing to have been canceled. Questions of staff or council? Mr. Stev?
Yes, I apologize, Ms. Pizzuto. My head's still kind of spinning from the last hour's worth of conversation. This particular issue, is this talking about the, this is just flood easement planes, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I know where we are. We're good. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, you have recommendation from staff to adopt ordinance 0218, creating any recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Mr. Estev. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Barkos. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. All right, new business, update on the environmental initiatives. Chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, our friend and former mayor, who got the same dress code memo that I did. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Waiting for the picture to come up so that you can see the first slide. There it comes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Obviously, your meeting is progressing a little bit longer than you may have originally anticipated, and this first slide seems to be particularly apropos to the discussion you've been having. For in fact, in 2016, citizens gathered then to talk about how they wanted to imagine the future of this community. The focus of that discussion at that time was the sustainability plan that was in the offering then. But frankly, in this forum this evening, and in that forum that evening, and in a forum held even earlier last week, when they were debating filling the empty chair right here, what we saw then is a parade of citizens, each of which tried to share with the community their particular vision of Bowie. And in a sense, they were trying to imagine the future that they wanted to share with our friends, neighbors, loved ones, children, and grandchildren. So it's not inappropriate for us to talk about the fact that we are all listening. A lot of people are talking these days. And that evening, a lot of people contributed to the discussion, including some very young citizens in our conversation. And that fall of 2016, you adopted a strategy to implement a sustainability plan that the staff brought forth. It envisioned over 25 goals and dozens of specific projects over the next several years, which staff will continue to bring forth and which I'll mention again in just a moment. But on behalf of the Environmental Advisory Committee, I wanted to invite you this evening to reflect on our suggested next steps for your coming fiscal year to talk about the budget, because we want to build on that plan and that input from citizens to continue to enhance the quality of life in our community for our children and grandchildren. The suggestions I'm going to make this evening are, as they have always been, we think, bold actions, which we ask you to consider to help stretch your mind a little bit and perhaps move some of these ideas forward in the coming year, because we feel that these are consistent with the plan you've already adopted. But embroidery it a little bit more with some of the details, because they provide you with the opportunity to continue to demonstrate the local leadership and action that this community has become known for over the past 8 years. While you've kept taxes pretty steady, you have nevertheless been recognized over and over again for your progress in the environmental area. If we're to continue that tradition, I want to look this evening at 7 steps which build upon the more than 90 recommendations we've made over the past 8 years to help build a path to a greener, more sustainable, and ultimately area that builds our quality of life for this community in the years ahead. Obviously, I want to build on something you've already committed to, so we want to consider and urge the city government to become by 2025 completely powered by renewable energy. The good news is that before the end of June, you will inaugurate a facility you've already committed to that brings us to nearly halfway there. That's a wonderful commitment because it means having made the halfway measure already, you got a few years to make the other half. And there are easy ways to do that. I'll not go into those details because of the time this evening. But remember, it's not merely what the local government does. It's your opportunity also to use your own example as a leader in local government to challenge those who step before you and speak before this council and propose new development projects in our community or redevelopment projects to conform to the goals that you yourselves have adopted as a standard for your own performance for this community. So we urge you not only to meet that goal for city facilities, but continue to use the yardstick that represents for greenhouse reduction in the future for all new projects and redevelopment projects so that they continue to contribute to the quality of life in this community. That can begin in a simple way because this past year in particular, we've been reminded over and over again by the threats nature holds these days. And one way that local governments are beginning to adjust in their own planning to the threats of nature and climate change and ultimately the storms that are accompanying all that is to plan and install a microgrid in your community. It's a small, self-sustaining power unit that allows this government to keep functioning even when the area around us goes dark. Many of the local governments, as a matter of fact, in my experience, all of the local governments that we've been reading about in the paper are now investigating in this kind of technology because when the major utility, it begins to experience problems, as just this past week we saw more than 2 million citizens offline in the Washington and Baltimore region throughout Maryland. This is a way to provide public safety services and other services that are essential to the life of our community through solar, microturbines, batteries, and other kinds of technologies. We feel so strongly about this, I'm sure staff will bring this idea forward to you very shortly. But this really builds upon the new transportation options that are also becoming more widely available. I had the unique opportunity just a few weeks ago to go to the Washington Auto Show and to sit in on a briefing by innovators in the auto industry. And by the way, if you were watching, for example, the Academy Awards just this weekend, you saw some remarkable ads about some of the most innovative transportation technologies, including a new thing called Super Cruise, which will be available this fall, in which you could buy an automobile where you could have completely hands-free driving. Maryland has committed to having more than 300,000 electric vehicles on the road by 2021. That means that we should make sure that any new facilities built in this house are EV ready. And it's a small step to make sure, and by the way, we have one of the manufacturers right here in this community that provides some of these facilities, and Maryland's utilities are stepping forward and offering incentives for homeowners and commercial and residential facilities to help install these facilities through reduced rates for extended periods of times. And there are more than 50 different types of electrical vehicles on the market today. And we expect by 2030 that more than half of all new vehicles sold in the United States will have an electric, hybrid, or pure electric powertrain in them. So the housing that we build, the housing that we renovate, and the shopping that we change in the future should have EV readiness facilities to facilitate these choices by our citizens. The biggest handicap in their adoption is the local infrastructure. The fourth thing, last year we didn't make any new recommendations, but we talked about some things I'd talked about a number of times, and one of them is the need to enhance biodiversity in our community by insisting and strongly encouraging our citizens to use native vegetation in all our landscape plans. We urge you to make sure that all future development plans rely exclusively on native vegetation. We had a remarkable lecture that was shown repeatedly over a local community television by Dr. Douglas Talmey, who talked about his work in this area. He works at the University of Delaware, came to our community, and nearly 300 of our citizens came to the local civic auditorium and listened to Mr. Talmy talk about how this can be accomplished in a very cost-effective and a series of easy steps. It turns out there are very few species that would greatly enhance the biodiversity of almost everyone's backyard right here in our community. Now, step 5 is a little bit tougher, and you're going to be hearing more from your planning staff about this in the coming year, because this is not a new idea, but one that's beginning to get much more wide currency and discussion. It's called a complete streets policy. It looks at how we integrate all of these transportation options as we look at the street design and renovations in the street. It integrates trails and walking and pedestrians, and allows the interlink of these things with a number of transportation choices. So this complete streets policy should be a standard in all of our development and redevelopment guidelines in the future. You passed on some of those this summer, but staff said, and specifically, we needed a policy in this area, so we think it's time you sat back and looked at what the details would be in terms of the standards of our review for those recommendations we might make for new development in this area. And by the way, step 6, you've heard me talk about this before, because it simply says, we'd like you to ask the Community Services Department to conduct an assessment of the benefits, costs and benefits and values of a nature center as part of their work plan in the coming fiscal year. It gives us a chance to look at how we can provide a more complete array of services that help people understand the unique environment within which they live and its relationship to the preservation, protection of the Chesapeake Bay and the quality of life it represents in our area. Now, I said earlier there were 7 steps, but that 7th one is simply a highlight of our previous recommendations, which have yet to be fully acted upon. So let me just remind you what a couple of those highlights are. One of them is, and the staff has been looking at this, I think they've been running a pilot now of composting in our community. Several hundred citizens have signed up for this program. It goes on in communities. More than 1,000 communities throughout the United States do this already. Several dozen in our area do it. It's time to take that pilot and begin to look at how we can expand that program for composting residential food waste as part of a comprehensive recycling. As I've said from this stand before, nearly 90% of the waste stream is in one form or another recyclable. This makes that easier. By the way, there's a couple things that we really don't want to see in a landfill. And one of them is expanded polystyrene, or styrofoam. We feel so strongly about this that this year's Green Expo and any profits made from that for the first time will commit to buying one of these facilities that you see illustrated, which is a collection facility. By the way, there's one of these in Crofton, just up the road from here, and you can visit it and drop your stuff off. I have on several occasions. We want to place one of those here in Bowie and use the resources from the Green Expo to provide you the opportunity to make this service available. But frankly, with a city spread out over 9 miles in length, one isn't enough. But these aren't that costly. They're only about $1,500. We could buy 2 more of them for, we're going to give you the first one, for about $3,000. And that would take a piece of trash out of the waste stream that would in a landfill last more than half a century. And that's the easy piece. These are not expensive options. The next one's not expensive, probably costing less than $10,000. We've been talking about this one too. Adopt a plan and installation of a natural exploration area for our children at a local park. Part of it is finding a site for it. I don't really think it's an issue about how much it would cost. It's a question of where we would put such a thing. I would hope that we could make a priority out of helping the staff find this, and certainly we'll work with and encourage staff to continue to explore and perhaps bring this forward in the coming year. By the way, one of those other things that's going on, it was kind of ironic that one of your first speakers this evening talked about the street lights in Annapolis. They're presently negotiating with a local utility to buy all of their street lights. I won't go into the details except to say that city is interested, as are more than a half a dozen other cities in this region and buying their streetlights so they can convert them to LED lighting. The last time we did this and changed the lighting program in this community was in the early 1990s when we went to sodium vapor lighting. These lights are nearly 80% more efficient. I can't help but think that there's some cost savings in there if we can move to this kind of streets. The real issue that is the issue is how to deal with the utilities that provides for long-term maintenance and obviously buying those poles that gentleman spoke about. These are solvable problems if we put our mind to it. By the way, we've also mentioned, again about a year ago, that it's time for this community to commit to a Green Fleets program. That simply means, as I've talked about earlier in transportation, that currently available technology in the transportation area would allow this city to increase its overall efficiency of city-owned vehicles by at least 3% per year for the next decade. And you wouldn't have to buy anything that isn't already on the market today. You could improve efficiency by 30%, and that would bring us toward that first goal of that 25%. This is easy stuff, a sustainable procurement program. We still have, well, there's lots of easy things to do. We could participate in purchasing programs in cooperation with other communities and through COG. Right now, we kind of implement it department by department, but there's some common things we can buy across the entire city. And I think by 2020, we could be well on our way. Again, a staff priority with council support could help move this priority along quite easily. One of the things that stood out from that sustainability plan when we first sat down was a number of citizens thought there ought to be a community garden site. We've talked about this on a couple occasions. The staff has identified a couple potential places where it could be done. And if we can solve a couple of the technical problems for less probably than $30,000, again, not a budget buster, hardly more than the cost of a street light or two, we could find and provide water to and help create a unique opportunity for a group of citizens. And by the way, this was about the 8th ranking priority, and all of those chosen by the citizens that participated in the development of the sustainability plan. This last one's going to be a tougher one for you because it means you're going to have the staff take a hard look at how we collect trash in the city. We've talked repeatedly about single stream recycling, but you know right now this community puts a vehicle staffed by the Public Works Department in front of every house in Bowie at least 3 days a week. What you may not know is that every other jurisdiction in this area doesn't do that. All of them provide for recycling, regular trash collection, and they put a vehicle in front of a house only 2 days a week. If we're going to talk about expanding recycling and including composting, now's the time to begin to look at how we can reevaluate our trash collection schedule. It turns out in studies in the surrounding area, more than 85% of the citizens there put out regular trash only one of the 2 times that were formerly available. That means that it's not an issue merely of convenience. It's an opportunity for potential cost saving. It's an opportunity for reducing the waste stream. It's an opportunity to save on those fees that we talked about. It's a policy whose time has come. It's a policy to look at in the context of those 25 goals, 57 strategies, and 103 actions that are mentioned in that sustainability plan, because taken together, all of these ideas in that plan and shared here this evening are our path forward to provide the basis for encouraging bold actions consistent with what you've done before to preserve and enhance the natural values of this community. Because when you put them all together, we think they provide a beautiful path forward. They are the next steps in creating a greener Bowie, and they will change the way you serve our citizens, their children, and their grandchildren. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have about these.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Allen, for coming out this evening. It's always good to see you and hear your report. It's always quite informative and refreshing, not to mention green. But I wanted to ask you, are you aware of any local or municipalities who have gone to 100% LED lighting? And if so, I know you said it, cost savings expected of about 80%.
There are 6 investigating it. Annapolis is looking at it. Arlington, Virginia is the closest community that has fully made the conversion that I'm familiar with. And the consultant that did that has frequently approached our committee wanting to make a presentation to you about it, so we could possibly work with staff to work that out if you'd like to hear what the details are.
That would be great. I would like to know even too, this number of dollars that Arlington was able to recoup as opposed to, or save as opposed to foregoing LED lighting.
If you make a distinction between the utility bill, which represent cost savings, and the capital investment in the conversion fixtures themselves, which are initial capital investment, which are then amortized over about 20 years, there are cost savings. If you look at it as, wow, I gotta come up with this money to buy the lights, while at the same time continue to pay the utility bills, then probably in the short term, you'd see it as a cost factor. In the case of Baltimore City, where they are been going to this, they estimate their savings over the next decade at in excess of $10 million. But it's tough to compare a city of over 500,000 with one of just over 50,000. So while, again, the data is available in the 2 cases I've just mentioned, I wouldn't want you to think, gee, we can run out and save hundreds of thousands of dollars right away. There are issues, there would be challenges, but frankly, we're talking about a 5-year conversion and a generational commitment of savings, just like you would invest if you did solar energy on your home. You fight the increases in costs while you're making investment at current cost.
Okay. I would be interested in having that group from Arlington come in front of.
I'll be pleased to talk with Public Works and see if we can work that out.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Allen, for coming out. And this is I think these are amazing recommendations. You stated for the electric vehicle readiness that there is already a company in the area.
Yes.
What's the name of the company?
You know, I don't know the name of them off the top of my head. They did make a presentation before the EAC, and I'm sure we can provide that information for you. We've had several of these ideas have come right from local industries and businesses who've offered to be available to help with some of these things. But again, I don't want to recommend somebody that you have to go out and just contract with them. There are a number of businesses in the area that do this. They just happen to be the one that offered to help us understand what the issues and challenges are in doing it.
Okay, and then also the microgrid, how much does that typically run?
I'm sorry, say it again?
The microgrid, how much does that typically?
Again, there is an example in our area in Montgomery County. Prince George's County is currently looking at it. We had the occasion to talk recently with the Director of the Department of Environment, Adam Ortiz. And I think you'll be hearing more about that from staff about the time you open up the solar energy array, because they're talking about how that issue would augment the installation of such an opportunity.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
How you doing, former Mayor Gary Allen? I just want to ask you, I've had the opportunity to have discussions with the mayor of Kensington and been up in Kensington on several occasions. There is a street, it's a main street there in Kensington.
Yes.
I think that is LED lighting.
They have some LED lighting there, yes. And there's another community in Prince George's County, a small community that's implemented part of the Complete Streets program as well. And the mayor at that time was Adam Ortiz, who's going on to head the Department of Environment, yeah. He's a strong advocate of these ideas. Thank you.
Is it?
Is it?
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming, but I want to leave you with a question or conundrum, I guess. We have spent the last 10 years or so fussing with the governor's office, the previous governor, this governor, and the legislature to improve our share of highway user funds. This year, it looks like we may be coming to a point of decision. The governor, in the second year in a row, has made some very positive budgetary efforts. I spoke at the House bill last week, and they were very positive. Wednesday, the Senate is considering a like that will go back and put us in a systematic distribution process that will enhance our process.
For transportation?
My question is,
Yeah.
as we move more and more to electric cars, the highway user fund is going to go down and down and down.
That's
And we're
correct.
still going to be left with the obligations for potholes and roads and bridges and whatever. So one of the things I think has to be part of this conversation is how are they going to pay for their share of road use and that sort of stuff. I mean, I think we all agree that the evolution is real and the momentum is going in the right direction. But at some point in time, we're going to have to add that other issue, and I'm not sure how that's going to go. And I mean, I'm certainly not going to come up here and argue about new taxes or whatever.
Projected mileage of vehicles is expected to increase by more than 30% in the next decade, and the use of gasoline is expected to decline by about half
Yeah.
in the next decade, so
Yeah,
clearly.
but what I'm saying is,
based
as
on
people buy less and less of that product, because they get more and more efficient and more environmentally sensitive, either we're gonna have to go to a whole new registration fee basis
I think the
to,
tax
you know,
structure will have to change, I agree.
anticipate what an electric car is gonna drive on a year, because they're still gonna wear out the roads.
Agree
So,
100%.
I'm, you know, just food for thought kind of an observation. But,
I will just share with you that my thoughts on this subject will be the subject of a magazine article at the April issue of the MML magazine, because driving toward the future is an important topic, and you notice half the things I talked about tonight roughly related to the revolution in transportation. So there'll be enormous implications, whether we embrace those changes or try to ignore them. The truth is, they're going to come anyway. So our question is how we can adjust to it. Simplest thing in the short run, I might add, is the advent of these autonomous vehicles that I spoke about in the future. And one of the critical variables for the operation successfully, those, is the lines on the streets. So there'll probably be new funds available ultimately to help us with striping the community. So that complete streets picture you saw may turn out to be something very critical for our transportation future. Thank you very much.
Well,
Mr.
thank you,
Merrill.
sir, and I'll leave you one last thing. I see the police chief back there, and it's my belief, he may be the only police chief that has electric motorcycles in his fleet.
The city set an example in that.
And the one neat thing for me is I don't hear them.
Very, well, that's. one
Thank
of
you, sir,
those-
and thank you for your committee. I see you got some of your members here with you. Thank you for what you do. And why don't you stand up for a second so we can.
My ESC is here,
Thank the-
several of
thank the
members of it,
committee.
and members of the green team, the chair of the
Yeah,
green team.
we do appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and we appreciate you keep pushing us and pushing us and pushing us, because it's the right thing to do.
We keep flying the flag.
And you enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Item next, mid-year budget review, Mr. City Manager.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and City Council, and residents of Bowie. I'll take, for the record, I'll read the letter that I sent to you all, to the, those out in the audience and out in television land. Honorable members of the Bowie City Council, I am pleased to submit for your review the fiscal year 2017-2018 mid-year budget review. The report covers the status of objectives committed to in this budget, as well as financial summaries and forecast information for fiscal years 2018 through 2023. We focus on the general fund since this represents the bulk of our operations, and it is the fund that determines the real estate property tax rate. By June 30, 2018, the general fund balance is projected to be $37.1 million and represents 7% of the expenditures for the same year. Revenues and expenditures for 2018 are projected to be $48.9 million and $52.9 million respectively. The city financial position is strong. As real estate values recover and new development projects come online, the city economic outlook is stable, to put it mildly. This report also indicates the status of each department's objectives and the progress of each capital improvement project. It is hoped that this programmatic information will illuminate many significant accomplishments, as well as provide a schedule for the completion of other objectives in the remaining months of the fiscal year. Signed, Alfred Lott, City Manager. I also implored you, Mayor and Council, and all others to study this report in detail. What I intend to do here is go through the report and select and highlight particular accomplishments, but in the interest of time and knowing that you've already studied this to some extent, I won't go through it all, otherwise we'd be here to midnight or 1 in the morning. That would not be good. However, I'll start with the city manager's component of this particular report on page 1. I'd like to report that one of our objectives was to work with the communications manager to finalize and implement a new and more extensive Bowie public information plan. If you all remember the events of January 3rd in 2017, I think that was my first meeting here. We had a room full of people who felt that they had not been informed of all of the events associated with that particular development under discussion. And so the staff took it upon itself to write a very extensive public information plan that I briefed you all on in September, and we implemented. And so we are currently continuing to implement this particular plan, and it's very detailed, and it explores every method of communication from the bulletin board in the senior center to Instagram and social media. The next point I'd like to make is that we're working with the Prince George's County and city staff to establish a tax increment financing district to complete the annexation of South Lake, which used to be Carrington. We are still working with the county and the developer, and we are prepared to proceed, but we have a problem with the developer, and the developer needs to get another partner with regard to the housing development component of that particular development. That is in process, and once that occurs, then working with Prince George's County, we intend to continue this project in hopes that it will be come to fruition within the next 6 months. But we are at a standstill waiting on the developer to finalize and to come up with another partner. I'd like to go to page 2 and discuss the successes of our Board of Elections and that particular aspect of government. Our objective there is to continue working with the County Board of Elections to maintain updated voter registration lists as well as street lists. As you all know, the city clerk and the Board of Elections for the city have been very busy, both with the recall election and with the forthcoming elections on the 12th of March. All of our lists are current, and we are prepared to execute this election on 12th of March without incident. I'd like to go to the communications component here. One of the things we want to do is improve communication with residents, especially young adults, new homeowners, by evaluating and possibly implementing the use of new mobile applications, social media platforms by the 30th of December 2017. After evaluating various alternatives, in October 2017, the city expanded its social media offerings to include Instagram, since it is one of the preferred tools for teens and young adults. And so that makes us more effective in our communications to our residents. I'd like to go to page 3, which involves the emergency management component of our operation. The objective is to continue the development of the city of Bowie's emergency operations plan, both functional and incidental specific annexes, including but not limited to the debris management, snow removal, hazardous weather, and damage assessments, and our objective is 31 May 2018. That particular objective is on course. Also, we are a little slowed because we have to make certain that our annexes and particular planning is synchronized with Prince George's County. They are currently redoing theirs, so that has slowed us down a bit. However, we do believe we'll be able to get this accomplished by the end of the fiscal year. I'd like to move to page 4, which is number 3, is something I'm particularly proud of. As a NIMS qualified person, myself, 100, 700, 200, and 800, and 300, 400, our objective was to train, develop and train a National Incident Management Systems Type 4 management team to operate the city's EOC by November 3rd, 2017. We also had the objective to train as many employees in the city in online training in the National Incident Management Training, which is called NIMS. The status is that the online training for all city staff for National Incident Training Systems 100 and 700, 200, and 800 for supervisors have been completed, except for those without computers. By that I mean our Public Works and Parks and Gardens. Otherwise, all of our people have taken the courses and have passed them. Of course, as I said before, I've taken all those, so therefore, all of our department directors are leading by example, and we want to be prepared and knowledgeable in case we need to have an emergency. And we can thank our emergency manager for really pushing the envelope on that one. Also, on page 5 there, if you notice number 6, one of the plans that we have is to conduct a tabletop exercise in the area of emergency management, such as flooding or power outages like what we just had, to strengthen the city's emergency management plan. And our emergency manager is planning to have that tabletop exercise in April. I'd like to move to page 7, which starts the CIP projects. Energy efficiency improvements. One of the things we have to do is implement renewable energy efficient technologies and energy efficient improvements at the Bowie Gymnasium and Allen Pond. We're waiting on, in this particular, we were looking for grants to help us with this project, and we haven't gotten those, but we continue to proceed with that, and we haven't given up on it. And I don't want to only talk about the things that we've done, but I will be open and frank here. I'd like to move to page 8, which is the police department. In particular, I'd like to focus on item number 2, which is the upgrade of the call center to become a dispatching capable and operational. And our objective was to do that by January the 1st, 2018. I'd like to say that we completed that task, and we're proceeding with training our call takers to move from being call takers 1 to call takers 2, which makes them able to be dispatchers and 911 operators in that terminology. And we did that in a seamless fashion, which was a really successful coordination between individual staff operations, including IT and the police department, Prince George's County, and our PEG and other facilities. Also, I'd like to flip to page 10, which is an IT objective. In this particular, it requires us to review and modernize the current information technology policies, identify new policies that need to be created, and this will be completed on June the 30th. I mention this because there are some of our policies and practices are as much as 15 years old, and as you know, after 3 years in the IT business, you're obsolete. So these were sorely in need of modernization, and Mr. Peterson and his team are working hard on those. I'd like to move to page 11 and highlight a finance objective that's being completed. This is number 1. Maintain the city's certificate of achievement for financial reporting and distinguished budget presentation award. The status of this particular objective is that we submitted all of the 2017 comprehensive annual financial report for that certificate, and we expect to receive the same outcome that we have over the last 16 years, I believe, 44 consecutive years, in that and since 1974, and so therefore we expect to receive the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award again, and we're waiting for those results. I'd like to go to page 12, which is the Kent Hill Center. The objective was to renovate the landscape planting at the Kent Hill Center in front of the multipurpose room and along parking lot side of the building by October 31st, 2017. That project and objective was completed on time. Moving to page 13, and I look housing inspection and code compliance. I'd like to highlight the objective that we review and update our code compliance standard operating procedures manual by June 30, 2018. The code compliance team are working hard on this particular project, and we project that they'll have it completed by June the 30th, 2018. Again, these manuals were outdated and in need of update. I will say that since I've been here, we've had a new supervisor and a really solid management team that's been very responsive in the code enforcement aspect of our mission. I'd like to move to the bottom of page 13 and highlight the Youth Services Bureau's objective 1 there, which is to expand and update the mentor training curriculum for teen mentoring program to include diversity training, mental health awareness, and other special projects by December 30, 2017. The status of that project is the training curriculum was updated and shared with the teen mentoring volunteers on November 2nd, 2017. Therefore, that objective was completed. I'd like to move to page 14, Animal and Disease Control Program, number 2. I'd like to highlight that, which requires us to develop the community education program to publicize the importance of microchipping and spay and neutering by April 30, 2018. The program is currently under development, and we project that it will be completed by April 30, 2018 without fail. I'd like to drop down to Recreation and Parks, number 1. Collaborate with the Parks and Grounds to identify appropriate locations for additional bicycle racks at city parks by September 30, 2017. Status: staff has completed the inventory of the bicycle racks within the city facilities and city parks, and the 5-year plan to increase the inventory has been developed. Therefore, this objective was completed on time. I'd like to move to page 15 and highlight the Bowie Playhouse. One of its projects was to replace the ADA ramp by November 30, 2017. That construction project was complete on time and the ramp was installed, and which is a significant matter. Also, on Parks and Grounds, if you drop down on the same page, the objective was to renovate the landscape planting at the Kent Hill Center in front of the multipurpose room, and I mentioned before, that project was completed also on time. Moving to page 16, I'll discuss the current ice arena that we have. Number 1, the objective there I'd like to highlight is that we weren't required to expand the Learn to Skate lesson program to include 1-day-long camps called Schools Out Skate Days for school-aged children by December the 31st. The status: the School Out Skate Days were scheduled for January the 15th and February the 19th and were a booming success. The skate rink was able to accommodate the camps and other adult and unscheduled participants without problem at the skating rink. So we plan to look at doing that again in the fall. I'd like to highlight that one CIP program on page 17 for the gymnasium, which is the design service for the cabinet and counter placements. The department's project manager and gym staff have met with and evaluated the current configuration of the reception and concessions area and the potential need to redesign the spaces to better serve the staff and the customer needs. We've been working with the project manager, and we are we're considering a design-build project, and we are currently 50% complete, and we expect to have this project on course by the 30th of March. I'd like to move to page 18 and highlight the CIP projects for the golf course, the Bowie Golf Course. This has been one of the most successful projects we've conducted in this fiscal year. I think if you recall, we total was allocated $250,000. We have successfully repaired the irrigation pumps and irrigation pipes, also the roof. We also replaced the boiler in the clubhouse. We replaced the windows and frames in the clubhouse. We also repaired the plumbing in the men's and women's bathrooms. We have a project going on to repair and upgrade the bunkers and fairways on the golf course, and we expect that to be completed by the 30th. And also, there were a lot of tree stumps on the golf course that needed to be ground out, because they become a hazard. We've taken care of that too. So kudos to the Parks and Grounds for that particular project. I'd like to highlight the Bowie Rail Museum project, which is listed on page 20, and that is requires an HVAC and lighting installation on the caboose for the Bowie Railway Museum. The design and engineering for this project is complete, and the percentage of the project is of total completion, including construction, 40%, and we're on course to move to the final construction and implementation of that project. I'd like to move to page 21, which highlights a planning objective, which is complete phase 2 of the Bowie Heritage Trail, Railway Museum amenities, and 10th Street Park. The status, the project design is 90% complete and is under review by both Park and Planning and the stormwater review by the city, and it is on course for completion. I'd like to direct you to page 23, which is another planning issue, which is to participate in the ongoing efforts to update county zoning ordinance. The status of that objective is that our planning staff has attended several meetings of the municipal stakeholders, focus group, reviewed the comprehensive review draft release in September, drafted the city council's position letter in December, and staff continues to work with the council, county elected, and staff to ensure that the city's recommendations and concerns are addressed and not forgotten. So that is a never-ending effort on our part, and we shall continue to do that. I'd like to direct your efforts to your attention to page 25, which is the Public Works Administration Division. This is an objective geared toward improving efficiencies, which is to implement improved processes for intake and tracking of all department design, review, permitting requests, utility, connection requests, understanding, of course, that one of the major operations and functions of the Public Works Department is to manage projects. The status of this particular objective is the work on this objective is underway and estimated to be completed by June the 30th. Staff anticipates publishing an updated application forms and design review checklists on our web once they are completed. I'd like to direct your efforts to page 26, which is Street Maintenance Division, number 2, which has replaced 300 street name signs during the fiscal year. A street name sign replacement program began in 2016. Replacements are prioritized based on condition and age. The goal is to replace 300 signs by June 30, 2018. Status, 108 signs have been replaced, 65 more ready for installation and design and cut and mounting. The remaining work will be complete by June 30, 2018. And of course, this objective will continue on through into 19 because it's one of those phased operations. That way, sooner or later, we'll get through the whole entire city. I'd like to direct your attention to page 27, which is another water division issue, which is to draft and complete the water conservation plan. As some of you may remember, a year or so ago, we did not have that water conservation plan completed, and it was an impediment to some grant applications. Well, we've overcome that, and because the status is that our conservation plan is complete. Submissions of the water conservation plan ensures the city's Bowie's eligibility for MDA water quality financing and grants if the need arises. I'd like to direct your attention toward page 28, which is a CIP project for public works and street resurfacing. We have surfaced 100% of our requirements for this particular year. If you can see in number 1, that's we were budgeted $1.5 million. We obligated that amount, and we're on course for a success. As you know, there are 3 things we have to do here: police, trash collection, and paving the roads. Those are the 3 big ones. And of course, sports activities too, I guess. But anyway, so also what's of particular note is that we've accomplished some paving operations in the Quarter Horse Drive, Owl Lane area, and we're also looking at the northwest paver replacement of Quill Point Drive and Quiet Owl Lane. And so we've gotten the designs, and now we just have to move on to constructions. I'd like to move to page 30, which is the repair the outfall structures at Saddlebrook. And the status is preliminary investigations have been completed, but design for the final repair is still pending. Anticipating soliciting requests for proposal in early calendar year 2018 and awarding a repair contract prior to the end of the year in fiscal year 2018, excuse me. I'd like to direct your attention to page 31, with improving the Public Works Administration building. The project includes the design and construction of the building's modifications to improve functionality of the conference room, the reception, and workspaces. The design is complete, but pending a permit review. So what we've accomplished so far is 90% of design completion, and pending, of course, the construction of that particular project, and it's a $95,000 project. I'd like to direct your attention to the page 33, which is the water plant. To install the new telemetry system and controls between the water plant, wells, and storage tanks. The project is multi-phased, and first phase funding has FY 2018 funding, and that includes the schematic design. The city staff qualified 3 engineering firms through a request for qualification process, and the proposals received from the top firms and evaluation has been completed, and the council approved it on January 2nd, 2018. So we are we're pending, ready to move to the next phase, which would be a construction phase. I'd like to direct your attention to page 35, which is the installation of installed scum pumps at the wastewater treatment plant to save scum disposal costs. The status, the design was completed, anticipated advertised for construction in January 2018, and therefore the accomplishment so far has been the design, and instruction bids should be in progress. I'd like to direct your attention to page 36, which is the water distribution recapitulation, which involves a phased replacement of worn out and pipes which suffer from tuberculation And in particular, I'd like to focus on the pipe replacement in Leanna Place, which was conducted this year, and the status is complete. We're still working on the phases that involves the design for construction that'll occur in the future, but we're still working forward on that one. I'd like to direct your attention to page 38, which is a senior center project, design services for the cabinet and countertop replacement. The Department of Public Works and senior staff have met and evaluated current configurations for the reception area and the potential need to redesign spaces to better serve staff and customers. This is an ongoing project that's complete. It's at 50% completion with the intention of being completed on March the 30th. I'd like to direct your attention toward page 40, which is item number 19, the indoor sports arena project. We are within 3 weeks of the design phase on this particular project, barring any adjustments, and to date we've spent approximately $322,871 on this particular project. Mr. Mayor and City Council, before we go to the financial summary, I wanted to know if you have any questions of the staff. All the staff that are related to these objectives and/or CRP projects are present, and we are prepared to answer any questions regarding any objectives or projects before we hand it over to Mr. Matthews to give the financial summary.
Okay. Questions for where we are now? Any questions? You want to go? All right. Go ahead and continue into the financial summary.
Mr. Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Lott. Good evening, Council and Mayor. How are you? We're here this evening to discuss the mid-year report, and we will focus on the general fund and the water and sewer fund mainly. As you can see, our revenue projections for fiscal year 2018 as of December 31st was 67% of budget. Note that in our budget for FY18, we projected 5.5 million use of the fund balance. Current projections indicate that may come in at about 4 million instead of the 5.5. You will also note that our expenditures are at 26 million at the halfway point. This is about 1.5 million below the normal smoothing of the expenditures over the 12-month period. Pretty much everything is pretty much in line as it was last year. As you can see on page 45, as we talk about the general fund revenue is just $100,000 less than it was this time last year. The major change in that revenue was the income tax receipts that we talked about for 2017 that were recorded earlier. We will not see that bump in income tax revenue in 2018. On page 46, we talk about the expenditures, and we compare those expenditures to where we were this time last year. Our expenditures this year, again, are 26.1 million. Last year, at the same time, was at 25.1 million. Our current projections on our fund balance as of 2018, we, again, expect that fund balance to fall into about $37 million. In the out years, we'll talk about that in a few minutes when we get to the forecast. Just a little bit of information on the equipment acquisition and replacement fund. That fund is used to replace our major vehicles, computer equipment, our trash trucks, and other major equipment. That is a fund that has done the city well over the years, and we've been able to maintain a flat tax rate by using this type of mechanism. Expenditures, as of December 31st, we spent $674,000 for several items, time and attendance software, 7 police vehicles and body camera systems. That was $435,000. We purchased 1 van for $26,000 and a floor scrubber for $9,354. The next fund, which is our capital projects fund, we haven't spent too much in that fund as of yet. Most of these projects come due close to the end of the year once the engineering and design is determined and when that construction contract is let. So we have a myriad of programs in the capital project, what Mr. Lott just went over, so I won't go over that again. We can move on to the water and sewer fund. The water and sewer fund is currently holding its own, but as you know, over the several years, consumption has been down, basically because citizens are conserving their use of water and the replacement of old equipment such as toilets, wash machines, use less water. But with that said, the fund is still pretty healthy. Total revenue for the first 6 months was $3 million. Our original look at the fund balance for water and sewer, we were estimating using about $107,000 of the fund balance. We're currently projecting $156,000, and basically that's just due to capital project cost overruns. Things are coming in a little higher than anticipated. As we look on page 50, we can look at our revenues as compared to last year this time. The increase there is mainly the increase that council put in place last year for the recapitalization of the infrastructure. That was $22.75 per quarter per customer in order to replace the water pipes. Page 51 shows our expenditures, pretty much the same as last year. We're on track to meet our expectations there. I'll move over into the forecast. And let's talk about how much of the revenue is actually coming from the property tax revenue. That's about 61%, and that is the major inflow of revenue. From that, we have a personal property tax, we have our state share revenue, which runs into about 24%. And as you know, and you spoke to earlier, that the governor has been pretty favorable with providing municipalities a $1.3 million grant over the last few years to supplement the highway user revenue that we have lost. In my projections for the fiscal year 2019 through 2023, I've included a couple of improvements, and one of that was a component part of the Milford Town Center. We included the assessed value of $13 million for the first hotel that should come online next year, well, part of this year, but we'll see it in the tax base next year. We're expecting, or we are planning for a increase in the tax rate to 23 cents for tax year 2019 through 2021, and an increase to 45 cents of the assessed value in 22 and 23. Personal business property tax, we plan to show that increasing by 2% a year. Our debt service formula shows not only our current debt service, but it also shows the $25 million coming on for the ice arena in 2019. So I just wanted to make note that the forecast shows expenditures outpacing revenues by 6% annually until FY 2022. The projected fund balance in FY 2023 will be $28 million. That'd be 45% of the forecasted expenditures for that year, and that's well over our 25% fund balance policy. Pretty much as we move into water and sewer, as I indicated earlier, most of those baselines are the same. It's just that we're having a small problem with consumption. I think that's going to be ongoing. We'll have to keep monitoring that issue. With consumption going down, the cost of operating the plant still rises. Thus, we need to keep pace with the increased costs. As we move into the minimum charge, there will be no change there. We're expecting a annual grant of about $99,000 that will help us offset some of the increase in costs. That grant is due to the efficiencies over at the wastewater treatment plant by them keeping the phosphorus down. That has been a windfall for the city. It was unexpected in this year, and we are projecting that we'll receive that as we go forward. If you go to page 57, Council, that basically shows you where we're going to be at on our fund balance projections. And at the end of the forecast for water and sewer, we're expecting the FY 2023 fund balance to be $2.4 million, and that will be 29% of the forecast expenditures for that year, and that is in excess of the 25% policy that we have for fund balance. And with that, Council, I will conclude and say that the city's financial position is very strong. We continue to outperform our budget. Revenue has been coming in at the pace expected, and we foresee a solid footing in the city's financial future.
Sounds good. Any closing comment, Mr. City Manager?
Well, no, sir. We're on course to implement your directives that were set forth in the FY 2018 budget, and we intend to meet our objectives.
Questions of staff? Mr. Stev?
I have a very brief one, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I just want to say a big thank you to Mr. Byron Matthews for always being thorough and candid with us. The budget documents that you guys produce every year, they're accessible. Even I can understand it, and so God bless you for that, because that's a challenge, taking it down to a way that I can get it. I know that I'm often beating up on us for budgetary things, but I will say for the record, we are in a great spot. I know Mr. Mayor often gets frustrated with me because I always tend to be pessimistic, but we're in a good spot. AAA bond rating, lots of reserve money, and we haven't raised taxes in a long time, which is obviously great. I'm seeing you are projecting, without including, potential development revenue, we're projecting a 3-cent tax increase in fiscal 2019. Of course, that's subject to change. I know that we've had budgets in the past where we expected things to be worse than they ended up being, which of course we're always happy about. But that's obviously something that I think all of us will be paying attention to, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. And thank you again for your work, Mr. Matthews. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Trout.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, this is directed to Lee, our emergency manager. A couple things. One, in my conversations with our emergency manager, we were talking about the changing or the relocation, rather, of the EOC. And I didn't see that mentioned here, so I just wanted to see if that's still in the plan. That's one. And then two, wanted to congratulate all those that have gone on ahead and taken the National Incident Management System training, specifically with 100, 200, 700, and 800. I see we have, according to what was read tonight, we have a lot of, if not all of senior staff that has taken those four courses. But I didn't see anything, and I know that Lee and I had conversations about getting council up to speed on at least some of the NIMS training. Not necessarily having, 800 and 700, but definitely having 100 and 200.
Well, to answer your first question, sir, the idea of relocating the EOC, that's still in the works. It would not be in this particular budget, because if we do it, it will be in the next one. And so you may see it in April, when we come with that.
Now, on that particular note, Lee and I had extensive dialogue, and one of the things that I'd like to be more comfortable about is the fact of the security if we intend to move the EOC at the location that Lee and I had discussed. Because our previous conversations, not with Lee, but before Lee became the emergency manager, and even before you were the city manager, we did have conversations with the director of MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, and the prevailing thought there was not to put the EOC at that particular location. So I just need to have some comfort level in the fact that the area is going to be secure.
Yes, sir. I've had some extensive conversations with our police department, and they have confidently told me that, without a doubt, the area that we were discussing for the new Emergency Operations Center will be a secure facility, and there will be no problems with security at that location.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Well, then, let me thank you for all you've done for this year. And, I think that's a kind of an understatement to sit there and say the city's strong. The city's strong because of the work that you do. I tell you, you guys have some of the sharpest pencils in the East. So, on behalf of all of them, thank you for the attention and the focus that you provide. You guys are clearly a real treasure.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that, the department directors and assistant directors and supervisors here, of the 400 people working for us, are the people that are making it happen. My method of management is to empower directors and supervisors to do what they know to be their job, and not to wait on me to tell them to do it, because once I get this budget from you all, that's our flight plan for the next year. So they understand that, and they're getting the job done.
Well, obviously, you're all doing a good job as a team, so on behalf of all of them, thank you very much for keeping us as solid as we are. All right, item last is approval of city position on minor subdivision on Mitchellville Manor. Thanks all the staff that are here tonight. Appreciate your attendance. And again, thank you, Police Chief, for having the only electric motorcycles that I know of in the area.
My pleasure, sir.
You all can go home now.
Electric glide in electric. Mr. City Manager, sir.
Joe.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For the record, I'm Joe Minert, the Planning Director. This is a request for a preliminary plan approval. It's a minor subdivision, preliminary plan 4-17031 for property located on the south side of Airwood Lane in the Amber Meadows area. The property is 1.34 acres in size. It's lot 17. It's an undeveloped and wooded parcel. The request is for approval of a 3-lot subdivision on that property, creating 3 lots that conform to the requirements of the RR Rural Residential Zone. This is an unusual situation this evening in that the council does not typically see very many minor subdivisions, and the county planning director is authorized to approve at the staff level minor subdivisions up to 4 lots when those lots conform to the existing zoning and essentially have no major issues related to them. So the planning board at the county is not involved at all. So in this case, what is also unusual is that the staff, our staff only found out about the application after it had been filed and after it had been sent out for processing. We found out about it about 3 or 4 weeks after it had been accepted. And so under the county's regulations for minor subdivisions, there's a 40-day mandatory approval period in which once the application's accepted, it has to be acted on by the planning board, by the planning director within 40 days. So at this point in time, that application was accepted on February 2nd and is due to be approved by the county planning director, assuming that all the approvals are in hand mid-March. So this is the only opportunity that the city would have at this evening's hearing to take a look at the proposal. And council has been interested in looking at subdivisions within the city that occur. If you'll recall, a few years ago, there was a subdivision of a lot in the Buckingham section, and there was a lot of attention paid to that, where the property owner decided to cut out one additional lot from their home site. So in looking at this, we felt that it was important to notify the community of the proposed subdivision. The county regulations do not require the property to be posted with a sign. It does not require an informational mailing to the community or any other type of notification to the residents. So we felt that this would be a good opportunity for the city to step up and notify the residents. We sent mailing out to 80 homes within the area vicinity of the project. We posted a public hearing sign on the property on February 26th. We also used available media such as the city website, email, and also robocalls to the neighborhood to make them aware of this proposal. And so what you have before you tonight is 3 lots being proposed, and I can review a couple of the slides I have just to orient council to the property. The applicant is Amira Chalabi, and believe they are here to make a presentation, but I will go ahead and walk you through a couple of the slides to orient you to the property first. As I mentioned, the property is located on the south side of Airwood Lane. It's just to the east of Harbor Hill. It's about 1.3 acres. This plan shows the preliminary plan layout, which is essentially 3 lots side by side that front on Airwood Lane. This is a copy of the stormwater management plan. There's essentially a grass swale toward the back of the home sites that would run from west to east, and the drainage would be picked up into a storm drain pipe on the adjacent property, Lot 16, which is owned by the applicant, and then piped into the public system along Airwood Lane. This is a copy of the tree preservation plan that shows the back portions of the lots. All 3 lots will remain in a wooded condition, and all tree conservation requirements will be met on site. And this is just a blow-up of that plan that shows a little bit closer the proposed home sites, and each one of the home sites would have an individual driveway accessing Airwood Lane. And finally, this map shows in the red line the municipal corporation boundary of the city. This property is identified on this map as 16035 Airwood, and it is not currently in the city limits. And so this just gives you an idea of the location of the property in relation to the city. The developer will have to go through the city's stormwater management process because, as I explained, some of the drainage will drain from the property onto the public right-of-way, and so therefore the city will be involved. And in the future, driveway permits will be requested for each one of the home sites, and the city would be involved in the review and approval of those plans or those permits. In summary, staff found that all of the requirements for preliminary plan approval in the RR zone are met. The lots meet the dimensional requirements of the zone, and tree conservation is provided on site. So staff recommends approval. And we would seek your concurrence with that recommendation. And if council concurs, we'll send a letter down to the county planning director. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the applicant? Yes, sir. Oh, please. Welcome, sir. If you could identify yourself for folks at home.
Good evening. My name is Ziad Shalabi. I'm the engineer. Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Council. I'll keep it very brief. I know it's late. Like the staff said, we agree with their recommendation. We are meeting all of the requirements as per the zoning regulations. We're providing all of the required tree conservation requirements on site. We're improving the stormwater management in the area as a result of what we're doing. So we would ask that you would approve this application. And thank you. If there's any question, I'll be happy to answer.
All right, well, have a seat. We may have some questions for you, but thank you very much. Do we have anybody signed up to speak? Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Christine Malone? Welcome, ma'am. My neighbors, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the city council members. First, I would like to say that I've been a resident of Bowie, in Bowie for 7 years now, and the reason why I chose this community is because of the nature and greenery around my house and in the neighborhoods, considering the amenities. I'm drawing a blank because I'm so tired. Allen Pond and the bike paths and things in my neighborhood, and this property is directly across from my street. And I heard the gentleman over there say that the notification was sent out in consideration for all of the, in consideration of 80 residents in our neighborhood, but I felt that we didn't have enough time to really consider this proposal, and there are a few people from our neighborhood in this area that do not agree with this proposal to have the 3 lots, the 3 homes built on this lot. And I personally, I don't understand why we would tear down this area for 3 homes. I don't see how this will benefit the city or the Airwood neighborhood, or actually the Arbor Hill neighborhood. Sorry, I just need to make some of my other points. I didn't have enough time to prepare for this. So in conclusion, I'm just asking that you all either reconsider this application or give the Arbor Hill community time to petition this application because I received this letter on the 27th, and I'm sorry, but I don't open my mail every day, so I actually did
You're
not
fine.
see this until
You're
Friday.
You got that
To
Amber
be
Meadows
honest.
glow about you. so-
Yeah, so I'm just, that's my request. And
Okay, well, thank you very much. Next speaker is Pamela Davis. Welcome in. Good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a little past my bedtime, but this matter is very important to me, so I decided to stay awake and so that I could let you know how I feel about it. I live on Mitchellville Road, and I hesitated to come here tonight because I've lived long enough and seen enough to know that a lot of times, once it gets to this stage, what we as a community thinks doesn't matter anymore because the papers have been signed and the money has been paid out. But, and I just hope that what I'll say will have an impact because it affects me and my neighbors and where we live. But since this will affect me personally, probably more than a lot of people here, I want you to understand how this is going to affect me. When I bought my house, I've lived in Bowie for 23 years. It was my first home, it's my only home. And the single reason that I bought it on this particular street, even though it was a busy front street, was because my living room faced the woods, which is where you're planning to build these homes. And last year, I got a 20-year bonus on my job, and I used the money to take out a window and put in a 4-panel door so that I could look out the window, I look at the birds, I take pictures when it snows, I take pictures of the rain because it looks like a little rainforest out there. So it's really important to me that I have this peace and serenity since my front yard is Mitchellville Road. So I really love the beauty of the trees. And I even posted on my Zillow profile because I just try to keep track of the property values. But one of the advantages that I put there was that the living room faces the woods. So I was upset a few years ago when BG&E came through because I had 4 Bradford pears that lined my driveway. And in the spring, this time of year, they were beautiful. But BG&E decided that they needed to cut them down and they replaced them with twigs. So to me, that diminished the value of my property, you know, and I was really upset. I mean, really, really upset. And I finally got them to come and plant something else there, but they're twigs. They've been there for 3 years and the stem is this big. So to me, that just diminishes my property. It makes the traffic seem a lot more because there is more traffic now. So I know that, you know, some developer has a lot more money than I do. And it's important to them and people want to, you know, make money, but this is going to affect me and my peace of living and the enjoyment of my home. So that I just hope that, and I request that you respectfully just consider our neighborhood and the people that live there. I moved to Bowie because it was green and it was quiet and I love the rural environment. I don't want all of this development. And I'm going to be retiring in a couple of years, and I want to just be able to sit out. That's what I told all my friends. I just want to sit outside and look at the birds and drink my coffee. And now I'll have neighbors looking at my door, and my new 4-panel door. So every time I sit there and open my curtains, and my daughter gets on me because I always like to keep the curtains open because the view is pretty. Now I'll have 3 neighbors looking at my window. So I would hope that you guys will take that into consideration when you make your decision.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I understand there's a couple of people that didn't get a chance to sign up that might want to speak.
Yeah.
Is there anyone there? Is there another neighbor? If you want to come forward. I just need to get your name and address, right?
Yes.
When you get up to the phone.
My name is Erica Salinas, address 1908 Ardland Court, and we are adjacent to the property in question. We are not long-time residents of Bowie. We are actually a starting family that have moved to Bowie from Annapolis, going on 3 years. And the reason we chose Bowie was because it's a residential area where we'd be happy to raise our family. We just had an addition in October. And we love the diversity that Bowie presents. We love the fact that it's more low-key than neighboring cities are. Like one of our neighbors said she likes to open her curtains and look out the window. We actually don't have curtains to our back sliding glass door, because when we look outside, we are able to see a section of woods that provides very much tranquility from the surrounding areas and our work days. We are against this project due to the deforestation that it would present to our neighborhood. One of our favorite activities is to take walks with our dogs, and I think this is one of the only, if not the only, lot which does not have any human, interaction. It's one of the only places in our entire neighborhood that is still environment for other animals. We actually just went through deer season, and my dogs barked because there's a family of deer living in that space currently amongst other animals. And so that would be, I think, tragic for us to take away that habitat from them. In addition to that, I'd be interested in seeing how this would affect our home values. I don't believe that it would be a positive thing for our homes or that of our neighboring homes. And then, if you don't mind me taking out my phone, I had some points written. Sorry.
Okay.
The other thing would be the traffic in the neighborhood. As it stands, we have a neighborhood that's very tranquil. Kids are able to ride their bikes, dogs are able to go on walks. Bringing more homes into the neighborhood, more traffic into the neighborhood would put that, would threaten that, in the sense that there would be more cars passing through right next to our homes. And then my last point would be just the nuisance that new construction would bring to the neighborhood as it stands. I understand we are actually one of the only families, or one of the few families, that are new residents. Most residents have been there for years and years and years, and it would provide a difference in environment that is not something that would be welcomed by us or our neighbors. So I hope that you guys take my points into consideration, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Was there anyone else?
My name is Pearl.
Ma'am, before you leave, if you could check with the city clerk and make sure she has the proper spelling of your name and address.
The lady back there, you were in line, right now? Okay.
Yeah, she can come up next.
My name is Pearl M. Brown. I live around the corner on Alderwood Lane. I've been in Bowie for 43 years. My kids grew up. Now, I received my letter March 2nd. That was Friday.
Yeah.
Saturday, I got a robocall telling me about it. I had a debate because my husband died 4 years ago, so we would always go to the meetings. We had to fight. The property behind me on that where the CVS, the car wash, the car dealership, they wanted to put homes there. We had to stop that. They wanted to put a storage bin there. We had to stop that. So Bowie City Hall bought that piece of land that my property touched, Don's and a lot of others on Alderwood Lane. Now, this piece of property that they're thinking about putting 3 houses, want to change the name to Mitchellville Manor when we are in Arbor Hill. But anyway, that land, what are they going to do? How are they going to do for the wetness? That part of land. My kids were small. They were almost 2 when we came from overseas here. It's always been a wet land there. That street, when it snow or rain or freeze or cold, our wood land is always a mess. We have contacted Bowie City about it. They've cleaned the drains. It's a runoff there. It's very low in there. It's kind of like a little pond somewhere in there. Now, Bowie, I understand when we first came here, is built on springs. I'm not saying it's one there because they thought the piece of property behind me was some wetlands because it stayed wet. Because my backyard, it's a little ditch back there, it stays wet. But I have never had any flooding or anything. But that part of our wood is a wet area. Plus, they said way back, they were supposed to make that a park for the whole Amber Meadows neighborhood. Nothing happened with it. So it stayed as trees and things like that. We've had to fight people about coming dumping there. We stopped that. Now, to build 3 houses in the neighborhood, change the name, when you're in Amber Meadows, there's Amber Meadows 1 and Amber Meadows 2. So you want to put it Mitchellville Manor, you're not even on Mitchellville Road. I have a problem with this because that property was there when it first came, when they first developed, Levitt did it. And it was supposed to be parking or recreation area for children. And like the young lady said with her dogs and stuff, I don't go in there because I don't like snakes and things. But that area has been like that ever since I've been here. And I know ever since the mayor been here, because she's right in the corner from me. So I can't see. Are they going to put a drainage system in there? Are they going to, how are they going to stop that rain, that wetness in there and the runoff?
Yeah, they're completely obligated to take care of stormwater.
Well, where's the water going to run? How are they going to make a storm drain and the
what
development
they
is
have-
already developed?
That's what they have to prove to the county.
Okay, because I'm not an engineer, I was a business
Yeah,
education
okay.
teacher.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am?
I'm watching.
Oh, would you do me a favor? Would you touch base with Mrs. Hernandez there on the end, make sure she has a spelling of
And
any?
I'm against it, as you know.
Okay.
When you talk.
Welcome, ma'am.
Mayor Robinson,
Yeah.
to the council members. My name is Leonie Bond, and the property is directly across from my home. I moved to Bowie in 2001. I was living in Laurel. And the reason why I moved to Bowie, number one, was because of the schools and because of the community of Bowie. When I started looking for a home, before moving to Airwood Lane, I was on 197 and Mitchellville Road in those townhomes. And when I started looking to purchase a single-family home, I went all over Bowie, could not find anything to suit my liking. And the moment I drove onto Airwood Lane to that property, I fell in love. I said to the realtor, "Where do I sign?" without even looking at the home. And it was because of the trees and the tranquility that it represented. On that block, there's only 8 homes on that block. And in the spring and the summertime, I sit on my porch with my coffee because I'm now retired, and I listen to the birds and I watch the squirrel. And I just want that to be maintained for my community. I don't want to wake up in the morning and I'm looking at 3 homes, which I don't see how, like the person prior to me said, how will that benefit our city by disrupting a community that loves where they are, move to that neighborhood because of what they see and what it represents, just to build 3 homes. So I just would like for you to put into consideration what the members have said here tonight, the residents, and also, I don't think we were given enough time to look into this, to do our own research, and to come to a conclusion to see the benefits that it has. Right now, we don't see any, as residents, we don't see any benefits for us. And since we are taxpayers of this city, I think it should be held into consideration, the comments that were said here tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond to that?
Wait a minute, was there someone else who wanted to take it? Sure. All right, I think I'll ask you to make you the last one for the evening.
I'm a bit tired, so excuse me. Good afternoon, or good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. My name is Jacques-Philippe Métier. I live at 16401 Airwood Lane. I'm actually right across from Milton. So I don't think, like the previous lady said, I don't think we were given enough notice. So I don't have anything prepared, but a lot of folks have mentioned about the beauty of the neighborhood, which is why my wife and I moved there in 2011, and for a lot of the same reasons. The neighborhood's very quiet. It's very woodsy, very beautiful neighborhood, and we do see a lot of wildlife there: deer, I've seen foxes and rabbits, animals I actually didn't see before. But so I came here to understand what was being built, and the neighborhood, if you're familiar, most of the homes are built around the same time, the same era. You install you build 3 new homes there. How's that gonna fit into a neighborhood that's been established for at least 40 years? I don't know how that's gonna help the neighborhood, and I'm not sure if the gentleman that plans on building homes there will actually even, if he's even attached to the neighborhood, he just wants to sell a home and make money. So I don't know if this is something that can be stopped. From what I'm hearing, it's pretty much a done deal. But if there's anything that could be done, hopefully, something to help minimize the effect that it has in the neighborhood is all I could think of right now. But appreciate your time.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. Could I ask you just the same thing as touch base with Mr. Sanders so that your name shows up in the record? Okay, questions of council. Dr. Trout, you want to lead us off? You have the applicant there and the staff over there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at my notes here. Okay, looking at what was provided to us by staff, let me say, first of all, this information was brought to me less than a week ago. And I immediately contacted staff. And I asked the following things. One, that we communicate to the residents by all forms of communications possible. That was one of the things I asked for. Even robocalls. So that came from me, and staff did do what I asked them to do. And it's been like less than a week since that happened. So that's the reason why you didn't get this information until late, because we didn't get the information from the county until it was late. I also contacted our county council representative, because I'm asking him, I said, how can this happen? I said, we need to have some input on this so that we can raise this issue to the community, okay? He sends me information back, and he says that it got to them late also, and it didn't go, and the way it came up, it's not something that's gonna go before what is known as the district council, so they can't even set aside and hear it. So this is actually in the hands of the planning board. So there's a disconnect, not only there at the council level, but as far as the amount of time that the council was notified about this, and the same is true with the city. Now, we have a format here, and it's called a land use petition in Bowie planning area. And it's put out by staff on anything that comes before the council. And here is what it says on notice of legal notices. It says, notice sent to advertised properties. Well, that wasn't done until the 28th of February. What's the date? So you didn't have too much notice, did you? Okay, yes, there were 80 mailings sent out, but everybody doesn't check their mail on a daily basis. I'm like one of the other callers here. I don't check my mail on a daily basis either. I check my mail maybe like 4 times a week, but I don't check it 7 days a week or 6 days a week. I don't do that. Then it says, date sign posted. According to this, it says 2/26/18, number of signs, it says 1. Well, I couldn't find the sign when I rode up there yesterday. I saw no sign where this property is. And I had to drive around the whole area and say, this must be it, because this is the wooden land here. Because there's nothing there that indicates that it's a sign. There's no signs there to indicate that there's something happening on this property. And it should be a legal notice. That's criteria. and date legal notice sent out. It says NA, that means they didn't do that. It says notice sent to parties of record. It has NA again. That means they did not do this. This is the county, Park and Planning. Date legal appeared, NA. Once again, that means they did not do it. So we're being asked to vote on this when we did not have proper notification, not only the council, but the residents. This is a street that runs approximately 2.5 blocks. It's a dead end. Right behind the dead end is where the car wash is and where the CVS is, okay? So you're not gonna have a lot of traffic on this particular street. Now, some of the things that I saw when I was riding through it, I'm saying, okay, well, this is a nice little street and whatnot, but if they're talking about building 3 homes, if you're talking about building at least 1 home, that means you're gonna have to have construction equipment right there on the street. You're talking about 3 homes. So now you know that it's probably been a long time since many of us came into the city and we're in a new development. Because when you come into the city and you're in a new development, you know every morning the construction crew is gonna be out there knocking on the door. So you folks right now, if this was to go through, you can expect to hear saws and all kinds of loud noises as a result of the construction in the morning. It's not in the city. We also, we've heard that it's on wetlands. We don't know anything about the storm water. And as I mentioned before, there's no district court to review this particular process by the county. My thought on this is, if you can't follow the rules and regulations outlined by the county, for the county, to do business with the county and to do business with the municipalities in the county, then don't do it at all. So my recommendation is, based upon, I would ask my colleagues to vote this down.
Any other questions? Any other, okay. Mr. Developer, you want to make a last comment?
Yes. Again, Ziad Shalabi, I appreciate the comments made here. Just want to respond to the neighbors. The lots being proposed here, the lots in the neighborhood, the average size of all the adjoining lots are 10,000 square feet. In this particular case, each lot is twice the size of these adjoining lots. So we're providing twice the size of it. We're not trying to maximize or increase profits. The applicant and I have been living in the city for also like 17, 18 years, across the street on Queen Anne Bridge Road. We're part of Bowie. We're not strange to the city of Bowie. Another thing, the lady that was concerned about the trees, we're providing almost half of the property in tree conservation area, which will be placed in a tree conservation easement. No one can touch. She's on Mitchellville Road. She will be looking towards the rear of this property, and all of these woods will be preserved. As far as the storm drain issues, yes, unfortunately, the existing storm drain currently on Ironwood is inadequate across the street. We are providing twice the size of the pipe that running parallel to the existing one to facilitate and alleviate that issue of the drainage. So we're trying to do everything possible to meet, and not just to meet, to exceed the requirements. As to the county and the process, we follow the process the way it is. If the city, it's outside the city of Bowie, we filed with the county. If the city did not get the notices in time, don't take it on us. If there's any question, I'll be happy to answer it.
Okay, thank you. Well, if no further questions, you're up for a motion.
Okay. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is, you're asking the city to give you a permit for the driveway.
No, we're done.
And
just
by
make a- I just
asking
make a
the
motion.
city to do that, I'm asking my colleagues not to do it. And I move that we not approve this particular project at this particular time, because I think there's a lack of information that was disseminated to the residents, and we just cannot continuously do things that's going to affect the residents, and the residents not have a say-so or not have any input in what's going into affecting their day-to-day lives. I can't fault you for, what happened between you and the county or anything like that, but certainly after hearing that you've been a resident of Bowie for at least 17 years, I know that you've heard some of the things that have happened last year in the northern part of the city and the lack of information that was being disseminated to the residents, which is one of the reasons why last year I gave the city manager and staff at least 22 different things that the city needed to do in order to improve communications with the city. And one of them was to have stakeholders meetings.
All right,
So
can we get to a motion there?
I move that we not approve this.
I second it.
Moved and seconded by Mr. Garner. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance. Mr. Garner. Wait a minute, folks. Understand, this is going to be a county decision.
Yeah, this is a county
And
decision.
County, the project meets county standards. So I think we have some legitimate concerns here because we share your concerns about not being notified and not having an opportunity to see it. But I would suggest your next step would be to reach out to our colleagues at Upper Marlboro.
Yes, and I really want to add a little bit on to what the mayor just
Very
said.
quickly, we're going to get to an exec session.
I ask that you contact Todd Turner, because Todd Turner is our representative on the county council. He's also the vice chair for the county council.
Okay.
Todd is fully aware of what is going on here, and I have been in constant communication with Todd.
All right, thanks, sir. Mr. Garner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move to a closed session to consult with counsel to discuss a legal advice on a legal matter, to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about a pending or potential litigation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Good night, folks.